voting on today and voting yes will be the first step to do that. So I really do encourage our town to vote yes on this resolution. It is the first step, and it will be great to help raise awareness and to put James Island on the map to leading this revolution. So thank you. I appreciate you all and for making this accessible to us during this time. Thank you.
Am I supposed to be speaking now? Someone just asked me to unmute. Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Stuart Weinberg. I think most of you know me. And I just want to talk briefly about the declaration of a climate emergency and mobilization effort to restore a safe climate. I could probably, you all know that I could go on for at least 2 hours to talk about why we have a climate crisis. I'm not going to do that. But we all know that it affects us in so many different ways in James Island, in Charleston County, in South Carolina, in the United States. Tonight is an opportunity for the town of James Island to be the spark of change and to take a real leadership role. By passing this proclamation, you will be establishing the overall vision, allowing the town to create specific objectives and action plans to address the so many issues created by the use of fossil fuels. For me, it is very inspiring to witness the town of James Island be this leader and this spark of change. And it's not what you just do tonight. What you're doing tonight is going to take you on steps that are probably going to take months and years, but we're starting. And guys, it's time to start. So thank you very much for the opportunity to address you this evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Mr. Steve Gilbert.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Steve Gilbert, and I've lived on James Island since 1978, except for a 3-year interval in Florida to work on the Everglades restoration. Thank you for the opportunity to address the James Island Town Council tonight. I spent my career with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and NOAA, and a good chunk of my retirement working to protect, restore, and conserve natural systems that deliver critically important and free ecosystem services that benefit the health of our planet and humanity at large. Over recent years, I have witnessed the growing devastating effects of climate change on these systems, from drowning and loss of tidal salt marsh nursery grounds due to sea level rise to destruction of unique tidal freshwater systems from saltwater intrusion to bleaching and death of coral reefs from warming and acidifying oceans. The intensity and number of hurricanes is growing. The West Coast is afire with over 5 million acres burned this season. And the Midwest gets rain bombs or derechos. Drought and heat conditions are breaking all records, and the Greenland ice cap is rapidly disappearing, intensifying sea level rise. These calamities are just harbingers of worse to come. I have a science-based conviction that unless we take action starting now, this will all get worse, causing extinction of species, loss of biodiversity, untold damage from storms, droughts, and fires, hunger, disease spread, mass forced migrations of people, and more. It is our kids and grandkids that will experience the worst of it. And I don't mean to be all doom and gloom, because on the bright side, we can do something about it. We have the technology to rapidly begin the shift to clean energy and begin decarbonization of our atmosphere. In the interim, we can design and implement environmentally and socially sensitive adaptation measures. You have the opportunity tonight to take the first step into a potentially brighter future outlook by being the first town in South Carolina to pass a climate emergency resolution. For small beginnings like this, we have experienced success on big issues. I was part of the Don't Drill South Carolina movement from its inception, and we started from scratch with the first small town enrollment of the little town of Edisto Beach, and wound up with anti-drilling resolutions for almost 30 towns, including the town of James Island, and I thank you for that. It was grassroots movements like this up and down the coast, now over 285 municipality resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. That's your 3 minutes.
Okay.
Next, we have
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Margaret Bobo.
Ms. Bobo is muted.
Hello, Mrs. Bobo.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I too want a cleaner environment, but I totally disagree with this new Green Deal proposal for the town of James Island. And something this serious needs more than one Zoom hearing. It is overreach of the highest order. The town of James Island council members have too much. They, in my opinion, don't use it for the betterment of the island, including, of course, Folly Road all the time. Why not have a beautiful boutique hotel on Folly Road, yet it was not allowed? The zoning had been changed through council to not permit hotels on the island. Why? I had a customer for 2 adjacent lots I have on Folly Road south of Fort Johnson. I had a once-in-a-lifetime offer, and the buyers wanted to put a car wash in that location. This money would have made the rest of my life far more secure. Some people feel that Folly Road had enough car washes. When did competition stop being a good thing? If you believe in capitalism, which made America the greatest country in the world, and not socialism, then you believe in competition. The prospective owners worked with the town. The tree issue was resolved, the survey done, and this zoning board voted 3-2 to not allow approval of the car wash, which would have been between a tread quarters and an automobile repair shop and across the street from a gas station. Their reason for voting no: too many car-related businesses on Folly Road. If you found this report alarming, just imagine what the situation would be if you give the town the authority authorized in this resolution. And that's the reason I got off topic, because I wanted to show what can happen with guidelines that aren't always fair. If you believe God controls the universe and not man, you will find many claims in this resolution offensive, alarming, and very destructive and radical to the development of the town of James Island. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Mrs. Jen Wright.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Good evening, James Island Town Council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight in favor of the Climate Emergency Declaration resolution. My name is Jen Wright, and I'm a James Island resident and a professor at the College of Charleston since 2008. And while the hat I'm wearing tonight is one of a climate activist, someone who deeply wants to protect my community, my home, my friends, and my family, and my country from the ravages of climate change that are coming and that are to some extent already here, I don't actually study climate change. I study heroes. More specifically, I study the way people become heroes, how they develop the courage, compassion, and fortitude to make the right choices and to do the right thing, even when doing so comes with risk and may require sacrifice. How do we give of ourselves what we know the well-being of our families and our communities and our world requires? How do we stretch into the space of uncertainty and discomfort to become better people, better stewards, and better leaders? I often feel as if the work that I do as an academic and as an activist are separate, but this is a place where they clearly overlap. Making the changes necessary to protect ourselves from climate change and to reverse the damage that's already been done is going to require heroism. There's no doubt about it. It's going to require people working together to be creative and innovative and to face the truth of our situation and change quickly. But more than that, it's going to require people to embrace the fact that wealth isn't measured by how profitable our corporations are, but instead by how many of our people and our ecosystems are thriving. Climate change is going to require courage and compassion, generosity and tenacity, and perhaps more than anything else, integrity. The climate mobilization proposals that I've seen will ultimately save untold lives and an insane amount of money, but they aren't changes that everyone is going to want, and that puts our leaders, such as yourselves, in a difficult position. You're going to have to be willing to face the truth and fight for what climate scientists are clearly telling us must be done to protect our island and our planet, even when there are strong incentives to do otherwise. And I recognize that that's a tall ask. Tonight's resolution is both a small step and a huge step in the right direction. It's small because it's simply a resolution. It's a commitment to publicly recognize the problem and to explore how best to address it. And it's small because we're only one island. But it's also huge because it represents our willingness to challenge business as usual and to admit that we have a serious problem. It's huge because it represents a first step for us and for South Carolina. Historically, we know that national change often starts with local change, with local people being willing to speak up and fight for what they believe to be true and necessary. A few weeks ago, I sat through several hours.
That's right. That's your 3 minutes.
Okay, thanks.
Next,
Thank you.
we have Mr. Jim Bobo. Hello, Mr. Bobo. Do you wish to speak still? Okay, we can come back to him. We have Miss Diane Shields.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. I wanted to say thank you very much, respectfully, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I do want to say that it's really a credit to you, and it's wonderful that you are trying to be part of the solution. However, I don't believe, and neither do my neighbors, that this is the proper way to do it, especially as people are not aware that this is happening. And it's a little bit more than a small step. It's something that actually has a little bit of teeth in it. We've read through the resolution. And as a person who's very interested in the environment, I've helped plant 1 million trees in a year using volunteers and worked so much with conservation in the past. It seems to me that the increased taxes and the burden on the people here that I read in your resolution far outweighs any benefit you could receive. A solar fire engine, paying energy credits, that won't stop global warming, but would be highly expensive for people already burdened here. I want to say that I think that climate change is not an emergency. Fires, flood, hurricanes, hunger, closed businesses, people losing their jobs, income and homes. These are emergencies, and these are right here, right now on our island, and we're dealing with these. People in immediate danger need emergency attention and help, but calling this an emergency gives the representatives of James Island very, very broad powers. And it gives at least the appearance of a power grab, which we don't want. I'm sure this is not what you have in mind, especially when constituents are unaware this is happening. So at this time, I think we really need solutions that offer relief to the people that you represent and not oppression. Incentives for solar and wind power are great. Mandating more rules and regulations to satisfy this kind of global agenda does not seem to be the right thing right now. California, where we've lived and left, is experiencing waves of rolling blackout right now. People are suffering without air conditioning, refrigeration, or even fans in 120-degree heat. And it's because California let go of 29% of its fossil fuel production and replaced it with 51% solar and wind energy. And it's not enough. Now, when they need it, they're having to buy power from the highest bidder. It's very, very expensive. So I just want to say, well, I think you are doing a wonderful job. I think this proposal as it stands and as you're doing this, just slipping it through right now is bad for James Island. I'm informed it's illegal. So you might face expensive lawsuits, which nobody wants. And it distracts from the excellence of the actions you do every day, not to tear down, but to raise up the people here who trust you to truly represent them. I just want to say too, this is the Declaration of Independence and the Emancipation Proclamation were both occurred on this day in the past. And so I think we need to live as freely as we can, responsibly.
Thank you, Mrs. Shields.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Bobby Lyon.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, James Island Town Council, for taking up this resolution. My name's Bobby Lyon. I've lived on James Island since 2004. And when I bought my house on Kentwood Circle back in 2006, I was not thinking much about the 13-inch flood elevation certificate that made me a lucky high point on James Island. Fast forward to 2020, I now realize that if drastic steps aren't taken to stop adding the climate warming gases into our atmosphere, that won't matter. There will come a time in the next 2 to 7 years where I will have to make a hard decision to probably sell my house before the local housing market plummets, when more of us wake up and realize that the roads that are connecting us to the city and the beaches that we love won't be passable half of the year. And that's not such a distant future. I moved here, and for over a decade, I've researched ice algae in a freezer with lights down at the Fort Johnson Marine Science Labs. And these amazing single-celled organisms live in our Arctic and Antarctic ice and feed those prolific food webs. And when I started my PhD in 2006, scientists didn't have a good understanding of what was happening to this 1.7 mile thick ice sheet that covers the rough area of the United States and Mexico together. We now, through the advancement of technology, are realizing that below this 1.7 mile thick ice sheet, it is melting at an alarming rate. And we continue to hear more grim news from the expeditions going out to these ice caps. So as a scientist, though, I also see that creative engineering and technological breakthroughs continue to pave a road to a new and better possibilities. And I have no doubt that we have the means to take the fossil-free leap before it is too late for James Island. Passing this resolution will ensure our local decisions that we make now steer us towards a future where we can all grow old and live and die here on this island that we love. Furthermore, proactive steps and local investment in climate initiatives now towards climate resilience will make us more competitive for state and federal funding coming down the road, improve our current quality of life, and our future property value here on James Island. So please vote yes to take this courageous step in a resolution to start putting a priority of the future of our environment and our island's fate in the decisions we make now. Thank you very much for taking up this resolution and for giving me these 3 minutes to speak. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Mr. Joe Walters.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Nope, you're back on mute.
How about now, Ashley?
There you go.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. After a quick internet search of Resolution 2020-12, this is what I discovered. Resolution 2020-12 is a form letter document with blank space to insert the name of your town, county, etc. After a little more searching, I discovered that many cities have used this form letter for their climate resolution with some changes and/or additions. It was at this point I decided to compare both documents. These are the additions that I would encourage Town Council to examine. Identify a climate manager with all necessary powers to coordinate intergovernmental climate and environment changes. I quickly scanned on the Town Council budget, the Town of James Island budget, and didn't see the funds allocated for this position. How are the funds going to be generated to pay for this new employee? Are there going to be new fees for James Island residents, business owners, and property owners to pay? What current budget items will be eliminated to pay for this new employee? If this is an existing employee who's going to be handling the climate manager position, who's going to handle their current workload? The next one is directs that all town staff and town elected and appointed officials be educated on the latest climate science and the mobilization of resources needed. Once again, I referenced the budget and I didn't see a line item for resource mobilization. How are these resources to be mobilized? What new fees will be charged? What current budget items will be eliminated to afford the mobilization of resources? The next one is updates to the comprehensive land use plan and planning and the zoning and land development regulations, the ZLDR, including metrics that prioritize the decrease of fossil fuel use and climate adaptive land use planning, changes to building codes, local ordinances, and permitting processes to prevent the construction of new local fossil fuel infrastructure. This addition is a declaration to change the ZLDR and comprehensive land plan. Will additional impact fees be charged to James Island residents, business owners, and property owners? What construction will be prevented? How will these zoning changes impact the town of James Island budget? What will the true cost of changing the building codes be to a property owner on James Island? It is not a sound decision to incur the expense of hiring the climate manager, re-education of town staff and town elected and appointed officials without knowing the true cost. Changing the ZLDR and comprehensive land plan to justify removing existing zoning uses and prevent construction without knowing the impact to the budget or the damage it will cause to the entire James Island community would be irresponsible. I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, but it's an overreach. And I would really, really like for you to take a look at the additions that were added to this form letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to go back to Mr. Jim Bobo.
Hello, can you hear me now?
No, sir, there's a bit of feedback.
Turn it on. Can you hear me now?
There's a good bit of feedback. Do you have the meeting playing on another device, perhaps?
Come back to me, please. I think I'm figuring it out. I'm not
Okay,
the most.
we'll be back. All right, next we have Mr. Matt Wisnant.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much to the town council, to the mayor for allowing this period of comment on this proposal. I only became aware of this a couple of days ago. I've never been involved in local city government or really any kind of government. I've always been interested in politics, but for the most part, like most people, I kind of want to stick to my own business. I like to discuss politics with people, but I don't really have time in general. You know, like a lot of people, we're all very much engaged in our daily lives. When I saw this come across next door the other day, someone posted looking for support for this resolution. I went and read the resolution, And I was just absolutely dumbfounded. You know, as someone who sort of, number one, loves this place, and number two, I generally trust our elected officials. I was shocked that anyone would propose something, frankly, quite so brazen as this. There, as a previous speaker went into a lot of detail to describe, there are provisions in this that will dramatically increase the expense of living on James Island and dramatically drive down the livability of this island. The things that are being proposed here will give the town council control over so many aspects of people's lives that a lot of the livability of James Island will go away. Individual liberty will go away, and the expense of living in this place is going to go up dramatically. If you start running the numbers on this, I have no doubt that you'll see that. Simply the suggestion of reducing carbon emissions, or actually eliminating carbon emissions by 2030, number one, that's not possible. Number two, if you did try to do it, it would cost exorbitant amounts of money and would absolutely require increasing taxes. Now, some people might say that we could offset that with government, with federal funds and grants and things like that. That's robbing Peter to pay Paul, because the federal government gets money from us in the first place. So what we would effectively do if this thing passed is it would drive businesses and individuals away from James Island. It would make this place unlivable. Now, the people who are pushing this have accepted what is, in my view, chiefly an ideological view. The view that humans, it's an extremely anthropocentric view. It's an idea that humans are in control of everything. We are not in control of the climate. If we were in control of the climate, we would be able to create models that can, number one, explain what's currently happening with the climate, explain what has happened in the past with the climate, for example, like ice ages, why we went into ice ages, why we came out of ice ages. We would be able to accurately predict what's going to happen in the future with these models. However,
Thank you, sir. That is your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Miss Lauren Gelatly.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Lauren Gelatly. I am a resident of the town, but I'm speaking to you this evening with my professional hat as the Director of Operations for Low Country Local First, which is a nonprofit organization that supports local businesses. And I will keep it very short, but I wanted to say that we are in support and hope you will support the Small Business Loan Assistance Fund that is being proposed this evening. This is a great development for the island and a great show of support for the small business community here. As you all well know, they're just hurting very, very badly. And so anything we can do to help them live another day, pay their payroll for another month is a wonderful thing in our opinion. You have a wonderful partner proposed for the program with Charleston Local Development Corporation. They are the best of the best in our region. They do this every day. So they will be a great partner for your program. We also applaud the town's seed funding for this program. So we know that you've looked to what Goose Creek has done. So there are other local models. There are many other towns and communities that have done this. So thank you, and please support this measure this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Miss Hannah Noel Bouchard.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight on behalf of the Climate Declaration Emergency. My name is Hannah Noel Bouchard, and I am a school nurse in Charleston area, and I'm also a mom of an almost 2-year-old, and I live on James Island. The effects of climate change are already having a detrimental effect on the health, pocketbooks, and overall well-being of our people right here on James Island. Hurricanes are getting stronger. Flooding and storms are becoming more and more frequent, leading to increases in water contamination, property loss, waterborne illnesses, injury, and death. Rising temperatures and more frequent heat waves cause dehydration, heat stroke, and exacerbates illnesses like heart disease, respiratory disease, and diabetes, all of which South Carolina close to leads the country in incidence rates. Air quality gets worse by the day due to more intense wildfires, more allergens, and unprecedented pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. Children in the schools are suffering more asthma attacks and missing more days due to respiratory illness than ever before. If we do not act now by declaring a climate emergency, if we sit back and continue to go about business as usual, the James Island we know and love right now will not be recognizable, much less livable for our children and grandchildren. Every climate impact I mentioned earlier, storms, heavy rainfall events, vector-borne illness, poor air quality, those things all affect kids at a disproportionate rate. Right now, we are effectively doing nothing to make sure our children can live without fear of losing their home in a hurricane or of losing their life savings on healthcare bills, or by being able to raise healthy children of their own. Please, for the health and the lives of our children, let's support Resolution 20-12 and declare a climate emergency and take the lead on climate action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bobo, let's give this another try.
3 times the charm. Can you hear me?
Right. Yes, we can.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, and all, and thank you for your patience. While I, like many James Islanders, want to do my part to maintain a healthy planet, I respectfully oppose the declaration of a climate emergency proposed by Councilman Milliken on the following grounds. First, the document is a fill-in-the-blank form available on the internet. It was not drafted by the town, it received no public input, and it fails to take into account common sense issues and issues unique to James Island. Town residents were not presented with the opportunity to debate anything in this resolution, and it seems a proposal of this magnitude deserves lengthy public debate. Second, this fill-in-the-blank form was not written by scientists. It was written by individuals in 2007, with a motive for financial gain and self-enrichment. True to the online version, Councilman Milliken's call to end greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible and no later than 2030 is not only unattainable, but based on optimistic deadlines that are presumably from 13 years past. Perhaps a prudent course of action would be to let the federal government and the South Carolina General Assembly write laws addressing climate change. Third, this fill-in-the-blank form has many similarities to Representative AOC's Green New Deal. In the US Senate, not one senator, Republican, Independent, or Democrat, voted to even debate the bill. Perhaps the bill had no support even among Democrats because her Green New Deal attacks the United States as being the primary culprit of greenhouse gas emissions, as does Councilman Milliken's proposal. Furthermore, the 2 US Congress resolutions referenced in the councilman's proposal are both dead in committee in both the Senate and the House. Fourth, this resolution will negatively impact residents, businesses, and property owners on James Island. It will strip residents of more of their property rights, add never-ending new layers of government regulations and enforcement personnel. There would be no boundaries. As the proposal states, it will require more government employees that we will pay for, who in essence will then have an unprecedented power of enforcement over town residents' daily lives. The town of James Island Council appears to be representing its personal agendas, not the average citizen's welfare. In closing, it appears to me that this proposal is not for the residents of James Island. Instead, it is another example of more government overreach by this council in town. I would urge council members to abandon what appears to be simple power-grabbing tactics to pursue your personal agendas and instead perform your sworn responsibilities to the citizens you are elected to represent. I will email this to the town clerk and I'm happy to share with anyone. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank you.
That is everyone we had signed up to speak in advance. If there is any other attendees out there who would like to speak tonight, please use the raise your hand function now. Okay, we have Miss Mary Bryant who would like to speak.
Hello, council members. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Mary Bryant. I've been a resident of James Island for the last 6 years. I urge you to please vote yes to the climate emergency resolution and related issues before they get. Generations depend on the decisions. Well, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, that is all we have wishing to speak tonight.
All right, well, thank you very much. Let's go to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from August 20th and September 3rd?
I so move. Councilwoman Mignano.
The second?
I second Councilman Mullinax.
Are there any additions or corrections? Okay, all in favor, say aye. I mean, excuse me, call the roll. I apologize. We need to call the roll.
Councilman
Counselor,
Bowles.
please call roll.
Councilman Bowles. Councilwoman Mignano.
Yes.
Councilman Milliken.
Aye.
Councilman Mullinax.
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. So those are approved. So now we go to information reports. Our first information report is the finance report.
Okay. I think we're just about finished accruing revenue. So there's not much revenue to report. If you go to Public Works, the projects, the $8,200, $1,200 was signs, $2,600 was Regatta Culvert, and $5,200 were trees on Grand Concourse. Under facilities and equipment, the janitorial is for July and August, and we've added some janitorial fees for the new Pinckney Park Pavilion. Under traffic calming projects, the 105,000 were for Clearview, Eastwood, Stiles, and Schooner. And the $24,000 at Pinckney Park is for the new shed. I think that's all I have.
Oh, thank you. Are there any questions for the finance officer?
Yes, I have a question about the JIPSD Fire and Solid Waste Services. There's still an administrative expense in there for $9,000. I thought that we had voted to remove the administrative expense from that bundle.
We did. I think it's just still showing on the budget report, but it will not be spent.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's go to the administrator's report. Mr. Callahan.
In an effort to save my voice tonight, I will just, you all have the report in front of you. If you have any questions for me, there are a few things not on there I wanted to call out. We have the town community services grant applications are out now. We've advertised those, and I know Francis has reached out to award recipients in the past to make sure they get their applications in by the October 2nd deadline. And then we have a request for proposals out now for grant writer services. And those are due back to us at the end of next week. And that's all I have.
Okay, so are there any questions for the town administrator? All right, hearing none, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the annual department reports, but I'm afraid they're not ready. If there's no objection, I'd like to defer those to next month. All right, hearing no objections, let's go to the Public Works report. Mr. Jones.
Yes, all right. In August, there were 7 new requests for service. One was drainage related, and the staff has responded to all of those requests. Staff responded to Hurricane, and I'm not going to pronounce this right, so I'm sorry, Isaias, and conducted sandbag operations. 1,000 sandbags were distributed to 100 households. This was a joint effort with the city of Charleston. Staff participated in the countywide virtual meeting to discuss post-disaster debris removal. We continued maintenance on the walking path in Pinckney Park, and we participated in the virtual drainage committee meeting that was held, and also the virtual LEPC meeting, which is the local emergency planning committee. Monthly stormwater managers meeting was held by teleconference, and staff participated in a virtual focus group hosted by the University of Florida to discuss traffic congestion solutions. And once they have their study completed, we'll be getting a copy of that. Staff participated in a webinar by Clemson Extension about low impact development. And we participated in a virtual meeting of the James Island Water Quality Task Force. Trulick Construction installed 17 speed humps in Clearview, Eastwood, Stiles Drive, and Schooner Drive. And staff has cleaned 10 signs in June and installed 3 new stop signs and installed 3 new street name signs. Are there any questions?
This is Councilwoman Mignano, and I do have a couple questions. Not so much about your report, but I know, Mark, you and I had talked about some different projects that were going on. And for one, I would like to say, I'm so looking forward to the classes that you and I talked about. I am very excited about that. The questions I have are about 1062 Renwood for the driveway apron repair, and the other one is about the Godbird ditches. I didn't know if you had any further information on where we are with those.
Yes, the Renwood project is 4 weeks out. That's what I've been told by Charleston County, and they have not responded to my inquest about continuing the ditches on Godbird, but rest assured they will get done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I was wondering, Mark, do you know where we are with respect to the continuation of the sidewalk from Seaside to Winbourne?
I believe they're in permitting for that, and it shouldn't be too much longer before we can go out for bid on construction.
All right, thank you.
Well, we're not quite at the point to put it out and bid for construction, because that's a project that we're going to have to get some matching funds for the construction. But yes, they are working on the permit documents.
Okay, good. Thank you.
The town requested matching funds for that, and that was denied. The Public Works Director. All right, hearing none, thank you so much. So now let's go to the Island Sheriff's Patrol. Sergeant James.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. So not been a whole lot of things that have been going on the last few weeks, except for I got some good news. One of our main break-in suspects who has been breaking into stuff, he's been to prison many a times, has been arrested recently. Deputy Scruggs and another James Island Deputy Harris was out there around 3 o'clock in the morning, and he was breaking into cars, and they caught him breaking into cars over off of Fort Johnson, and it's coming to me. Chris, do you remember exactly what street was that they caught him on? Waterloo?
I believe it was that.
What's that?
I believe it was Waterloo.
Yeah, Waterloo. So, yeah, so he was breaking into cars as we knew that he was out and he was going to do it. So he just recently got arrested, and they even arrested him for DUI. He was driving his moped drunk, and he was breaking into cars. And so we're hoping that he's going to end up, he's out on bond right now for burglary first, for breaking in a house at night while people were home. So this is a guy that we definitely need to see if we can keep him in jail until he can be sentenced for the burglary first. So that's one thing. And that last month, in the month of August, we of course been concentrating on break-ins, and so we've actually reduced those a lot. So we stopped about 194. That includes cars and people during the month. Worked 543 hours, wrote 20 tickets, 176 warnings. Just the town of James Island deputies, not counting what Deputy King does during the day, we ran 132 calls. So we were pretty busy in the month of August, as we normally are. And we had 11 field interviews and 8 arrests. We had 3 DUI arrests last month. We had a couple subjects that were wanted. We got a vehicle that was involved in a breach of trust. And Deputy King actually had a really good drug arrest. He got 85 dosage units of MDMA, which is basically like ecstasy is what it is. So I'm very proud of Chris, the job he's done. He's still out there building relationships, but at the same time, he's not letting crime slip by him. As far as that goes, I really don't have a whole lot, except for we're ending the summer. We're starting back school. So hopefully that gives a little more normalcy. We had a really good summer when it comes to break-ins. Shootings have pretty much ceased. We can't explain why. I really wish that I knew the rhyme or reason how they slowed down. We didn't lock up any of the players that we knew that were shooting back and forth. I don't know if one moved or I have no idea, but I know that we're very glad and definitely pleased that they're not shooting back and forth right now. But I'd like to pass it over to Deputy King, if you don't mind, Mayor and Council, to see if he's got anything to add, since he is there 40 hours a week now.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Like Sergeant Jim said, the month of August was pretty busy. I was out in the community a lot, responding to a lot of complaints I received via email. A lot of them came from the Fort Johnson area, Brigadier condominiums, that particular area. I responded to a lot. I helped the U.S. Marshals track down a federal fugitive. There was a particular incident where I was exposed to heroin, but I'm okay. It didn't get into my system, so that worked out greatly. I made a lot of stops during the day as well. The ecstasy pills that I got off the street, that gentleman did have the intent to sell them on the street of James Island, so he got locked up for that, and I got them off the street. So that was a good deal, because those particular types of tablets that he had are known for causing overdoses. So I think it was good we prevented that from happening.
Any questions for Deputy King or Sergeant James?
No, sir. Mayor, Town Council, listen, like I said, we're going towards the cool months, and so hopefully things will continue as they are. And we got deputies that are working a lot of night shift, a lot of evenings and nights. You'll see them out there patrolling the neighborhoods with their halos on. There's kind of the lights that glow and everything, making sure that people see us is one of our main concerns, as well as making sure that we know that they know that they're out there, that we're out there. So that's one of our big things. So as always, appreciate your time and effort that y'all put in.
This is Councilwoman Mignano. This is Councilwoman Mignano. I would just like to say thank you very much for all of your hard work. We appreciate all that you do, and I hope your kids enjoy their dinner.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing about having these at home, you know, got kids running around, but I apologize for that. But anyways, but thank y'all. And now my daughter's over here laughing, so.
No problem, Sean. No problem. All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Sean, very much. Let's go on to request for approval. Our first is the Small Business Loan Assistance Program. Ashley, would you briefly speak to that?
Yes, this program, this is a small business assistance program that was modeled after a program that the city of Goose Creek did called Kickstart the Creek. But it's a program that would provide low interest working capital loans to small businesses within the town that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. It would be partnering with the Charleston Local Development Corporation. And I do have a representative with them, Cindy Rourke. She is available for questions tonight. And I've discussed this with Councilman Bowles, and now he's reached out to his business council about it as well. If you have any questions for him as well.
So, we need to start with the motion. Is there a motion in favor of approving?
So moved.
There's second?
Second.
I second. Oh,
Well, I will say that Councilwoman Mignano got that second. So it's been moved and seconded. Now we can ask questions or have discussion. Any questions?
This is Councilman Bowles. I have a couple of questions for Ms. Rourke. Ms. Rourke, can you hear us okay?
Yes, yes. Good evening.
Thanks for being here. So my first question is, in the event, right now it's proposed that the town would provide $100,000 for this program. In the event it looks like we're not going to exhaust those funds, can the town just get them back without any sort of penalty or attachment?
So that's really up to the town. And so that's when we would have to put a time limit on when do you want to deploy the funds. We've worked with both the city of Goose Creek and with the nonprofit Lamsey on some federal funds that they received, and they chose to set it up as a perpetual revolving loan fund. So those just stay in coffers that are monitored, and the LDC would report back to those organizations on how those funds are deployed, how the portfolio is performing, the jobs that are created behind those loans, that type of things. However, if the town of James Island sees this as a temporary solution, then we could come to an agreement of how long does the LDC have to deploy those funds for businesses in the town. When those funds would be returned to the town of James Island, would it be a period of time, or when the principal amounts are repaid by those businesses? I mean, there's options, and the LDC is willing to work with the town to see what's best suited for you.
All right, Councilman Bowles, you had another question?
Yes. Also, do you have any insight on the number that that's in the proposal, rather? I'm curious if we could start with a smaller number and see what the interest is. And if there is a lot of interest and we exhaust those funds, then we could add to them later. Is that a possibility?
That is 100% a possibility. So, and I'm going to refer back to the city of Goose Creek. They funded this with an initial $250,000, knowing that if we deploy all of those within a certain period of time, and 24 months has been mentioned, then they could replenish it with another $250,000. So we would appreciate the town's help in publicity, trying to get the word out there, and deploying this with the most impact. And typically the LDC views impact as job creation or jobs retained. But we could work with the town on your interpretation of impact.
All right, well, thanks. That's all the questions I had for you.
I guess I have a question for the town administrator. What is the likelihood that if the town initially contributes a certain amount of money, $100,000, that we may get that money returned to us as part of a federal program?
Well, and they have not released the guidelines yet for the second round of COVID-19 funding relief through the South Carolina CARES Act. But there is a possibility that we could recoup that cost because there is a provision in there for reimbursement of assistance to small business, assistance for planned expenses. So I would say it's a possibility, but since they haven't released that guidance yet, I'm not exactly sure of the criteria they're looking for.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any further discussion?
Whenever, I have a point of order, Mayor, whenever it's appropriate, I was gonna move to amend something.
At any time.
Okay, so now, this is Councilman Bowles. I'll make a motion to amend what's been proposed such that the town would provide $25,000. And if that amount has not been applied for, or I think the word before used was dispensed, maybe. If in 6 months, the $25,000 is not being asked for, then I would move that or I would say we should amend that we retrieve the funds. If it all gets applied for and is paid out in the near future, then I don't see any reason why we could not all look at that and at a later time add more funds to meet the needs. And the reason I make this amendment, well, maybe we should have a second, and if there is a
Okay,
second.
yes. So is there a second?
I'll second it.
So the reason I make the motion is I think it's a really great idea. And Ashley brought this up to me first. And so, she deserves credit, as far as I know, for finding this opportunity for local business owners. No one has asked about it yet. And I've circulated it and I haven't heard a lot back. And that doesn't mean that this won't be a really positive thing for James Island businesses, but we just don't know, and I'd be afraid to put $100,000 out there without knowing. So I would say we dangle a little bit of bait in the water and see what bites, and if it looks like there are a lot of bites, then let's definitely try to help out as many people as we can. And if there's not, if for whatever reason folks don't need to take advantage of the stuff, then we could, without penalty, bring it back, or maybe even talk with LDC about alternative ways to do it. So that's the kind of the basis behind my amendment.
So to summarize your amendment, the initial contribution of the town will be $25,000 to the fund. This will be for 6 months. Any funds that are not lent at that time will be returned to the town. And also at 6 months, we might add, we'll make a decision then. Is that correct?
All applied for before even our next meeting, then we could talk at the next meeting about adding to it as well. So I would say 6 months would be the longest we would leave it out there before we bring it back. But certainly if it's gone before then, we should be able to add to it sooner than that.
So when I apologize, but the representative of the banking organization, you were describing, when the money gets paid back, it'll be relent, what would happen to it. I think Councilman Bowles is interested in that part of the money that is not lent out. And so would you speak to that? So if we fund this with 100,000 or 25,000, and we had a 6-month time limit that any money that if 50,000 were lent out or applied for, that we were in the process of applying for in 6 months. If it had not been applied for, then it would come back to the town. Would that be a reasonable approach? I hope you understand my question.
I 100% understand your question, and I thank you for that. So let me explain just a little bit. The LDC is what's called a CDFI. We're a Certified Community Development Financial Institution, meaning that we're a nonprofit with our mission is economic development, job creation, those types of things. So if you can imagine during this time of this pandemic, our funds have been in great demand. However, we are very fortunate to be an SBA micro lender, which means that we borrow funds from the SBA and we are able to relend those funds back out. It's not like the typical SBA loan that you hear about. It's not insured. It's our funds that we borrow and then we relend those. But with those funds comes grant monies for business advisory services. So we're able to have business consultants, bookkeeping consultants, social media consultants. So if we're able to combine loan funds with our microloan funds, then we get those support services for the small businesses. So if we are talking about a loan program for the town of James Island for loans between $2,500 and $25,000, we would suggest splitting a parcel of that with our microloan fund so to be able to support those businesses in James Island with business advisory services. All of that being said, I wanted to give you a good background on what the LDC does. The answer is, quite frankly, yes. I mean, whatever James Island wants. If it wants a 6-month loan program, and at the end of that 6 months, we meet and we say we've deployed 24,000, so there's $1,000 left, then we can absolutely look at just refunding that. Now, if that 24,000 was in a 24-month loan, then we would have to look at the principal repayment over that time and whether you wanted to reinvest that into another loan fund or if you wanted that simply repaid to the town of James Island. We can look at that both ways. It's just what's the greatest impact for your funds.
I understand. Any other questions?
This is Councilwoman Mignano. I have a question regarding the amendment. So if we only allocated $25,000 to start so that we didn't tie up $100,000 worth of our funds, if we found there was a great need for this, what would be the procedure for us to fund additional money for this? Would we have to come back to town council? Would it take a long time? Could we just say, go ahead and fund it, or what?
Well, Councilwoman Mignano, I'm pretty sure that if council only approves $25,000 for the program, we would definitely have to come back to town council, you know, and presumably, most likely at our monthly meeting, though I suppose if there was something really important, we could call a special meeting. Though, if our the financial institution, perhaps they have something different to say, is there any problem with us adding funds, you know, periodically to this?
There is not. The only thing the LDC would have to do is establish a separate bank account just for this particular loan fund. So we would work with city, town officials to figure a way to receive funds, and then we would also have to figure out a way of reporting the funds that have been deployed. But there's no problem with refeeding that after the fund's been established.
This
Thank
is
you.
Councilwoman Mignano again. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that if there is a great need for this, that, you know, if we only start with 25,000, which sounds fine to me, but if there turns out to be a bigger need, I don't want procedural issues to hold us up for funding other projects.
I'm sorry, if I may, the LDC does have other funds. And so if council is so inclined, we certainly could use other funds, report back to council and have our funds replenished from the town of James Island in order to put it back into that loan fund as a temporary placehold.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. This is Bowles. I have
Okay,
a comment
yes.
and a question to Councilwoman Mignano's question. The vision behind my amendment was that with it at the next monthly meeting, if it looks like this is a hit, we would add to it. And if not, we would just leave it where it is and see what happens maybe after that. Because it might take a little while for local business owners to get the materials together they need for the applications and things like that and get them done. So I was envisioning that if it's a really big hit, we could add to it at the next monthly meeting And then my question to Ms. Rourke is, who handles defaulted loans?
That's a very good question. So the LDC is fortunate in our success rate in vetting new loans. Our default rate is below 2%. Our delinquency rate is right around 5%. We're not a bank, so therefore we get to work with our borrowers. However, there would be no loan loss reserve unless the town chose to fund that as well. So our underwriting is thorough, but it is also human. And if the town chose to have a special representative on loan committee for town loans, we would certainly accommodate that. However, when we talk about 1 month to deploy funds, it takes a couple of weeks. Typically, it can take 45 days from time of application, from underwriting to approval, to deploying those funds to a loan closing. Can take 45 days, depending on what's being offered as collateral. It could be as short as 2 weeks, but when you have small businesses that are struggling that can't get loans from a traditional funding source, from a traditional commercial bank, there's usually something that needs an obstacle that needs to be overcome. That being said, I think 30 days to test a program is very, very short. I would say 90 days would be a great time period to test a program.
Well, the amendment we're discussing now, if I understand it correctly, is that the notion that we would pull the plug and pull money back is 6 months from now. So not 90 days, but even longer. Though, month to month, if there was a high demand for the funds, then we would revisit this question and perhaps add money. I think that's the point, but I thought it was 6 months was the limit. I believe that was correct.
Yes, sir. This is Bowles. That was the amendment. Yes, sir.
But we could add money at other times, depending on, I guess Councilman Bowles has the note, wants to have reports. And now the other question, which I guess I understood, was that if we put this money in the fund and it's lent to a business and the business does not pay the money back, you assure us that that's could happen, but it's not likely, but it could, then we would lose the money. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes. So that's, I guess that's part of being a lender. Any other questions or discussion?
One more question from me. This is Bowles again. Does LDC sell insurance for these loans?
We do not. We are not an SBA 7A lender. We only deal with truly small business loans. So we just have microloans. So, so the short answer is no, we do not.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other discussion or questions? And so we are now, preparing to vote on the amendment to reduce the amount from 100,000 to 25,000 and put in a 6-month limit by which time we would retrieve any funds that had not been lent. Or yes, that's my understanding. Okay, so any further discussion of that amendment? All right, hearing none, would the town clerk please call for the vote on the amendment?
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
And I vote no on the amendment. All right, so now we are on the main motion as amended. So it would be a program funded at $25,000 with a 6-month limit for initial loans. Funds that had not been lended would come back to the town if they had not been lent in 6 months. Is there any further discussion about the main motion as amended? Okay, hearing none, would the town clerk please call the roll, Francis?
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. Okay, well, that passes. And so let's go on to the next item on the agenda, which is tree work on Dill's Bluff at the boardwalking and on Camp Road. Ashley, would you like to speak to that, or would you like to have Mark speak on it?
Or maybe Councilman Milliken, he requested that we look into this, and these estimates are from Natural Directions, who is one of our procured tree work companies.
Yes, this is for work that is mainly along the boardwalk, and it also includes a couple of additional trees. And I'm not sure which trees you're referring to, Ashley, along Dill's Bluff. But the idea is just to clean it up, get the vines out of the trees there.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, would the town clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. All right, so that passes. Let's go on to the drainage study of Woodhaven subdivision. Ashley, would you explain that, or have the Public Works Director explain it?
Yeah, Mark would definitely be better probably to answer some questions, but really this is stemming from, I think back after the flood when we had a large sinkhole occur on Highwood Circle in this area. So we know that the drainage infrastructure in this Woodhaven area is in dire need of assessment and upgrading. So this would be a first step at that with Stantec Engineering.
Okay, is there a motion in favor?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so any questions or discussion? All right, well, hearing none, would the town clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
and Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. Okay, so next we go to JIACC, James Island Arts and Cultural Center, Design Fee Amendment, Construction Administration, and MEP Services. Ashley, would you speak to that?
Yes, and we have Jennifer Szarzewski here with Leolio to sort of help with this, but and this was the fee amendment that was just sent to you today because it came out of the bids that we had last week and the cost savings we identified, and then, knowing that our HVAC actually has stopped working over there. So we really need to be in a position where we need to evaluate that more and basically just get it working.
All right, is there a motion in favor?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or further questions for Ashley or Jennifer?
This is Councilwoman Mignano. I have a question. So regarding the HVAC renovation, what exactly does that entail?
Jennifer, can you touch on what the scope of this is?
Yes, good evening, everyone, and Councilwoman Mignano. Thank you for the question. The intent after speaking to Ashley in our previous conversations with the town was to try to address the concerns about the failing and aged equipment, primarily the condenser outside and the air handler as well, without doing, I'm sorry, my kids are about to come in. Not right now, Robert. Sorry, I've got a 6-year-old that wants a cuddle. The idea was to see if we could replace that equipment without a wholesale gutting and redoing of all the ductwork and lights and everything, that we knew that council wanted to stay a little bit lighter on the renovation. So the way we structured this, now that we have a general contractor that would be there doing the other work, that RMF Engineering would work with that contractor to put together a schematic design level for pricing to review with mechanical subcontractors, and give the town the ability to move forward with implementing that work. And if so, then we would move into the construction documents for bid and permitting, and depending on the cost, either bid it out separately to mechanical contractors or make it part of the prime contractor's work. So it's kind of the HVAC renovations are a step 1, 2, 3, and at each step you evaluate how to move forward.
So I take it to mean that town council, this will be coming back to town council depending on how all that turns out. Is that correct, Ashley?
Yes, it is.
So I'm sorry, Councilwoman Mignano, you had a follow-up question?
I did have a question. So these first items that I'm looking at for the 16,500, is this evaluating the HVAC, or is that trying to repair the HVAC that we have so that it can still function?
That is the engineering and doing construction documents and permit documents. That 16.5 is if the town has decided to move forward with bidding it. We would have to go through permitting with the town of James Island as well as Charleston County, because that's new scope in the project. And we would have to have construction documents, details, and specifications for the new equipment to bid out to contractors. So that is to put together those documents, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. So right now we've got a non-functioning HVAC system at the future center of the James Island Arts and Cultural Center, and the 16,500 is to evaluate what we need to have done. So is there anything, do you guys have anything going on to like patch this back together so that we have HVAC? Because I know that, you know, with the humidity and everything else, if we don't have HVAC, we're going to be looking at mold issues.
Right, I think, and you might be looking at page 2 of the proposal. Page 1 has the schematic design for pricing the 8,300, and that is to develop the approach. You know we have the preliminary assessment that was done. We know there's things that aren't working, but looking into the feasibility of how it can be addressed, because it is rather complex, to not just replace the whole thing, but to replace the components. And so we would work with a mechanical subcontractor as well as the mechanical engineer and that phase is to develop what's the best and most feasible approach that gets a fully functioning system. As it does say, the intent is to limit it to replacing the units, the air handler, the compressor, the ability to bring in fresh outdoor air. But it would work with the existing ductwork, which is just distributing it through the building. And it would work with the building's existing power systems. So it really is for the new HVAC unit components.
Thank you.
Is there any more questions or discussion?
I have a couple of points of order. This Councilman Bowles.
Yes, Councilman Bowles.
The total amount on this proposal, if we do not accept the optional custom graphic design, I added up to be $45,900. And I might not be understanding what we're talking about correctly, but I think we're talking about replacing the HVAC system in the old library building, right? And so $45,900 don't work in this arena at all. That just seems like a really high number to me. And I heard y'all talking about bidding this out, or it has been bid out maybe, and some of this incorporates using contractors. Does anyone on this meeting know, have we just looked at a simple replacement using like just an HVAC company only and what that would cost? And I apologize in advance if this is something that, if I'm replowing old ground, but it just seems like a whole lot of money right now. Thank you.
Councilman Bowles, if I might add one clarification, the first line item, the 12,800 is separate from the HVAC. That is for the contract administration services for the rest of the interior renovation that was bid. But the other components are all directly related to the HVAC engineering and design and permitting and bidding.
So, and so we have had one company in particular out there, and of course they tried to sell us a whole new unit, which was my fear. You know, Jennifer can tell you they've had to replace the whole HVAC system at the old library in South Windermere, and I think it was like $300,000. So yes, this is expensive.
That was, yeah, that's an estimate for a wholesale system replacement. But this one was previously estimated at 200,000. And the intent of this first phase is to see what ways exist to get a solution that's less than that, that costs less than that. But it is, they are really substantial systems for commercial buildings like this with these kind of occupancies and the code requirements for fresh air and ventilation.
Yeah.
And it does also, part of the fee does include some of the associated roof and architectural work that we would need to do to facilitate getting at these units and doing the repairs as well. So there's a little bit of ancillary work that goes along with it.
Thank you for explaining that to me. And then my follow-up question is, if we do this, will the result be functioning HVAC in the building?
Yes, sir.
So, and it may be something that, and Jennifer kind of touched on this, that, you know, if we award this contract to the apparent low bidder tonight, that it would be something we would be able to work in his bid as like a change order. But it might be something more substantial that we would need to bid out separately. We just don't know that yet.
Okay, thanks. And this is Bowles again. So that means this.
All right, any other questions?
So does that, the last comment mean that this might not result in the HVAC, in a functioning HVAC in the building?
I think the only reason is if we got a plan together of what it would take and if council determined that the expenditure was too great to undertake, you know, whether there's an option to do.
So Councilman Bowles, this is like a step towards moving towards having a functioning HVAC. Obviously, we have to have a functioning HVAC unless we, in the end, pull the plug on the entire program.
Yeah, but the question is whether you could do some Band-Aids to what's there to get it working again. This would be to get it all new equipment. I think the only thing, it wouldn't set up different zones for like future meeting rooms with it. You know, you wouldn't have a highly complicated zoning or distribution where you could have different parts of the building at different temperatures and things, but that doesn't really seem needed with this building and this program. So if this full design were pursued and executed, then you would have a new system in the building.
I apologize because I'm just a dumb lawyer. It's Phil Hartman. I'm just a caveman lawyer. But so the money that we're voting on for tonight is for Leolio to come up with a plan for how to fix the HVAC, but it would not actually result in functioning air conditioning in the building.
Right. These are design and engineering fees. They're not the mechanical unit costs.
This is Councilwoman Mignano. Have we asked as a town how much it would cost to repair the existing HVAC so that it can function, knowing that we probably have to replace the whole unit at some point in the future? Have we asked that and compared it to the design cost?
So would the town administrator respond to that?
I'm sorry, Councilman Mignano. Can you repeat your question?
Yes. I want to know if we have asked anyone if they can possibly repair the system that is, or is it irretrievably broken before we spend all this money on a design fee?
It's my understanding, and Jennifer, please correct me if I'm wrong, that part of this would be, yes, looking to see if we can replace what is there. There's a potential that all of these fees towards the MEP work wouldn't be needed if it is something that feasibly could be an easy fix to limp us along. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yes. So I think that what RMF already did in evaluating, how could this system be put back together? There's several. One of the most critical issues is that it uses a refrigerant that's no longer allowed and no longer manufactured. And so they felt that there was limited ability to patch up what was not working. However, Ashley and the town did have some mechanical contractors out to look at how to fix the units and get working. And what Ashley shared with us is that they were just all trying to sell her new units. And so, their opinion was you just need something all new. Our intent was the 8,300 is to definitively answer that question, have the engineers look at it in more detail, come up with maybe a couple of options to look at pricing with so that we can come out of that with the plan to present to y'all, whether it's great news, we can spend $20,000 and get this up and running with some repairs, or the whole system really does have to be replaced like we feared, and it's, could be a $200,000 item. And so we would stop, we wouldn't proceed with the 16,000 service or beyond if we weren't doing the whole new system. I know I feel that I'm making things more confusing, and I apologize. It's a complex issue because we can't say definitively yes, it can be patched, and we're trying really hard not to say definitively no, that it can't. We're trying to keep the exploration open to see what can be done to keep this working for y'all with a minimal expense. But so far, the folks that have looked at it have all indicated that it needs to be a new system because they can't tie in to the system that still uses the R22 refrigerant.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, I just have a concern about the cultural center in general at this point. If it's the case that we have to put in a whole new HVAC system, that's going to be an enormous expense. And I'm just not sure if we have in our budget money to be able to handle that, as well as the other renovations that are being specified. And I wonder if it's a good idea right now to go ahead and examine the HVAC aspects and make a determination on that before we move forward with the rest. That's all.
Well, so what we are considering now is looking at the HVAC. And so really we're hiring an outside engineering firm to give us what we hope is a definitive answer, and not and we hope it's different than the answer that the vendors gave us when we asked, repair company to come and visit us. Is there any other discussion? So hearing none. Yes, go ahead, Councilwoman Mignano.
I'm so sorry. So basically you're saying that the information that we got from all of the vendors, not one of them said, here's how we could patch this up to run for a few more months, et cetera, et cetera. But instead you need a whole new HVAC system. Is that correct? And if so, then I guess I'm concerned about spending all of these tens of thousands of dollars on assessment of the HVAC system? Because it seems to me it's either fixable or it's not.
Right, these, this is Jennifer Charzewski. These fees are for the design and engineering. I mean, it does include the initial options. I'd say more than assessment, development of options of approaches, but it's for the design and engineering and contract administration of executing the new systems.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And just to, could I get a company out there to tell me that, yeah, spend this amount of money and I can get it up and running? Probably, but I wouldn't feel confident with that. I would prefer having professionals give us professional recommendations that are objective and aren't selling the equipment before we move forward on any kind of investment with the HVAC.
Thank you, Ashley.
Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, let's go ahead and bring this to a vote then. I believe that we need to go forward and get better information about the HVAC system. And if the news is that it has to be replaced, we'll be coming back to council with what that will cost, and that we'll have a difficult decision to make. And we will look at the money we have in hospitality tax funds, which, we're funding this with hospitality tax funds, which have limited other uses. And we'll bring that forward, and we certainly hope that we come up with a reasonable option, a cheaper option, but we will see. And if there's no further discussion, would the town clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
Reluctant, yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. Okay, so now we move to the next item, which is the award of bid for the renovations for the James Island Arts and Cultural Center. Ashley, would you speak to that?
Well, we had a great bid turnout. We had 10 bids, which was really impressive. The apparent low bidder, Lockridge Builders, $74,800. Leolio's estimate for this phase 1 renovations was around $150,000. So that is a savings there. I would recommend approving them as the qualified low bidder. Leolio has done their due diligence and looking into that, and approving alternate 1 and alternate 2. I'm sorry, I don't know which is which, Jennifer. One of the alternates is freshening up the back space, which in the original base bid wasn't touched at all. And then the other alternate was taking down the paneling in the front part and patching those walls.
That's correct, Ashley. Alternate number 1 was to refurbish the cabinetry in the back staff and work areas of the building versus not touching it at all. And alternate 2 was to remove the wood wall paneling and expose conduit in the front lobby and provide drywall for a clean finish for the wall graphics.
Well, let's go ahead and see if we have a motion and second for this approving the award of bid. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I will second for discussion.
Okay, so any further, well, so now we will discuss. Any further questions or comments or discussion?
Well, I guess I would like to see what the outcome is of the HVAC study before we put additional monies toward the renovation. I think that would be a practical way to proceed here to find out whether or not we're going to have a functional building system before we work on the building.
I see. So I have some questions regarding that. If we fail to approve the bid, do we have to rebid this, or can we approve the bid later?
Mayor Woolsey, the bid form required the contractors to say that their prices are valid for 90 calendar days. So your first step, regardless, would be to post a notice of intent to award. Depending on your procurement policy, there's usually about a 2-week period for the other bidders to see that you intend to award it, that they could protest before you can actually sign the contract. But once you do that, we do still have to prepare contracts. The contractor would have to pull together his insurance, and then the contractor would need to wait for you, the town, to issue a notice to proceed. So you could line those items up and be ready to go, and then issue a notice to proceed when you were ready. I think that receiving 10 bids was honestly shocking for us. It shows the level of interest in the construction market and getting work and getting it done. So I know the contractors will be eager. But by contract, the bids have to be good for 90 days.
And so if we, find out troubling news about the HVAC, what are our obligations? When can we say, no, we pull the plug on the program? What do we owe the contractor?
I apologize. The bids are good for a period of 60 days. 90 days was the duration. I think until you give a notice to proceed, you wouldn't owe anything, because the contractor isn't starting work until you give a notice to proceed.
I see. So in terms of, if council were to approve this bid tonight, which I think it was a good bid, and so it'd be good to approve, we would not be obligated to go forward until we give them notice to proceed further down the road. Is that correct?
Yes, and so
then,
we could advise.
But if in 60 days they could, if we don't give them notice to proceed within 60 days, they could take their bid back or whatever.
Right, they could tell you that the price is now higher. I don't know that you'd be required to rebid it, but they would be more able to tell you that, sorry, costs have gone up and now it costs a bit more. But I know that we would jump, with the approval of the previous item, jump right into that first step. And I'm sure this contractor would like to work with us during that process to help me get the answers to the mechanical questions. One important thing just to know, in the interest of all information, this contractor's license limit is a total of $200,000 per job. So that's where we would, depending on what the HVAC costs, we might be able to add it to their contract, or it might have to be done separately. But we can handle it either way. Or it can be done either way.
So it seems to me that our best approach is to approve a very good bid, but that I would commit to you that we are not going to go forward until we have better information about the total expense. We will not issue this order to proceed and get committed to pay them a bunch of money without coming back in the next meeting and give you reports on what's going on. I think that we are the best to get started on this process rather than wait. I guess we have 60 days. We could do it at the October meeting. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yes, sir.
This is Bowles.
Yes, Councilman Bowles.
Thank you. Is there any harm in deferring this to next month? Because by then we might have the information that we want.
I think the primary thing is that you would lose further time, because posting the notice of intent to award, that is not locking you into a contract, but it is taking the next step in the procurement process that allows each stage to move forward. It allows the protest period to happen for other contractors. and other contractors to understand that if you are going to do this work, you would plan to award it to Lockridge as the low bidder. But I do think a good amount of work goes into preparing the contract and then gathering their insurance forms and documentation. So in that sense, yes, we'd want it to be a good faith effort that we were doing it. But telling them up front that you wouldn't want to issue a notice to proceed until you had your determination of your mechanical scope done.
Understood. So an approval is not an acceptance in any sort of binding agreement with the contract.
Right. Right.
Is that correct?
Right. It's just an official notice that the town intends to award the contract to this person, but it is not signing the contract with them.
And we have some timeline delay anyway that we need to get started, and that if we wait till next month, then that process will start even later. That's correct.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
I think the best situation is to go ahead and award the contract. It was a good it's a good bid, and then but we do have to look at the total. I think we have to look at the total cost, HVAC plus the renovations. On the other hand, I would say that in the long run, repairing the HVAC system is something that was likely going to have to happen. In some ways, it's better that it happens now rather than having to close the operation down, 2 years from now or whatever, and have repairs then. Councilman Milliken, you had correct foresight about, it was working last summer, but it didn't last long. So you were correct, but I think that awarding the bid is the best bet. That's be my vote. Any other discussion or questions or comments?
Do we need to have our town council consider any of these aspects, or are we comfortable moving forward with our general knowledge on this process?
You mean the town attorney?
Yes,
Yes. Yeah, our council is.
Right.
The other kind of council, right?
That's right.
I have confidence in that. Our architects are telling us correct, though. If Bo would like to speak to this, I suppose he's here on the line. We can bring him up.
I am. I'd be glad to look at anything you'd like me to, but I don't anticipate it being beyond the ability of council as it has been explained to them. But of course, I'll be glad to look over anything or answer any questions once I've looked it over.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so is there any more questions or discussion? Well, hearing none, let's bring this bid to a vote. Would you call the roll, please? Town clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
and Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. All right, so that passes. Next, we go to the Brantley Park existing dock inspections and structural evaluation. Ashley, would you speak to that?
Yes, and I have Chris Haynes on the phone with Davis and Floyd. And I'm just going to turn it over to Chris, if that's okay.
Sure.
Perfect. And Ashley, we've also got John Orvin, who's our primary structural engineer, on the call as well, who's going to speak to some of the structural items that you see in the study there. So my name is Chris Haynes. I'm a landscape architect with Davis and Floyd. We have been working on the design for Brantley Park to get that permitted through the city of Charleston and get it open for operation. One of the items that was included in our scope of work for the design was a structural evaluation of the existing dock structure that was out on site. And I think you all are familiar with the dock that's out there. We took a look at it, and John Orvin, who I mentioned earlier, leads our structural engineering division in our Charleston office, took a look at it, hoping that there would be primarily aesthetic improvements that needed to happen to the dock. I know it's a worn structure, thinking some railings replaced, wood replaced. But through John's inspection, something that did come up was the depth of the piles that are out there. And kind of the overarching issue here is that we had a dock that was designed and constructed for a residential use, for a house, a single home right there. And now as we are coming into what would be a public park scenario and inviting more of the public onto the site, then that does cause for some additional considerations to occur with the structural design of the dock out there. And that was my summary as a landscape architect. John, I don't know if you want to get into any more details as far as the structure and with the piles as well.
Yeah, I'd like to speak just roughly. The design normally for a residential type dock is like 50 pounds per square foot. Speaking structural engineering, what you would design a floor or something like that in a building, similar to a dock. But for commercial use, you want roughly have like 100 PSF live load capacity. That would allow if you had any type of assembly or anything like that on the dock, so it'd be safe for the public. There's also issues with the railings. Does not meet code. The railing is only like a rope in certain areas. Then in other areas, it's a single board. So there's issues with that. Doesn't meet code. So it's unsafe as is. That's pretty much the gist of it. It's just the structure capacity is not there for commercial type use. And then there's the issue with the piles. Some of the piles are only believed to be a few feet into the mud, so they wouldn't be capable of supporting that type of loading.
And obviously, with it being a public park, our concerns lie with, school field trips, church groups, larger assemblies, things like that can get a lot of kids or a lot of people out on the dock, and it's not structurally sound and not a good scenario for the town or the city of Charleston as the owners there.
And
Well,
so
I just would like to say that when y'all were looking at it, I was out there and holding the two piles and shaking it. Made me very concerned about the current situation. Anyway, go ahead.
The request for approval in front of you all is approving the cost to do the structural design, the permitting of this, and also the additional survey work that's going to need to be done in that waterway, $34,000. The plus side of all of this is that we would actually be able to design something in a better location that doesn't straddle the property line, and also be able to design it where we had a floating type dock or somewhere for kayaks to launch or other watercraft.
Do we have any, so this cost is 36,000, is that correct?
34,400.
And then and do we have an estimate for the cost of construction?
We have not gotten an estimate for any of the construction costs at this time. This is just for the design of the structure.
We have no idea.
No, that's not necessarily true. We think the dock itself would be a little bit over 100 grand or for a brand new dock, and also the site work probably be another 100 grand. So roughly 200,000 total for a project, something similar to that. Those are just kind of rough estimates there.
So how much is the city of Charleston going to kick in on this dock?
Well, I've asked Councilman Jackson for her support, but there is no guarantee. The general rule is that the funding is our part. The park. But I've asked her, and I think we may be able to get some funding, but no, there's no promises.
This is Councilwoman Mignano. I have a question about this. I know that our future goal is to make this Brantley Park a bus stop and have like a water fountain and all this kind of stuff. I have a big problem agreeing to fund $200,000 on a dock before we even have any parking. This is a dead-end street in a very busy, dangerous curve of Folly Road.
Well, actually, we are in the process of building a sidewalk along Folly Road that will go from this park, really a short distance to our existing parking lot on Santee Street. And so most of the parking will be on Santee Street, though we will have limited parking at the park.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just find it like that seems like a lot of money for us to spend on a piece of property that the city of Charleston owns. I would be okay with taking the dock out since it's not up to code for public use.
This is Bowles speaking, and I concur with Councilwoman Mignano's sentiments. I think that maybe if it's dangerous, we need to get rid of it or somehow protect the public from getting to it. And we may be putting the cart before the horse here to construct a new dock at a place that has not yet realized its full potential for the public. And one day it might, and I'm sure that we will be able to put a dock in at that time. But right now, I don't see anybody using it, and so I would concur with Councilwoman Mignano.
All right, any further questions or discussion?
And one point I just would like to bring up is that if we were able to, to get a dock that was well designed for our needs and then get the public's input on what they would like to see out there, have it permitted, then we would have those available to use for any sort of grant funding that we would try to seek for this. And we would also have a plan to present, hopefully to City Council to help match anything.
So I think, the town administrator is pointing out that, paying this money now and to develop the plan will give us something to move forward, that we don't have to immediately move into construction, that, it'll have something to show when we ask, if we ask City Council to make a contribution, or as the town administrator said, seek up hard grants or other sort of outside funding. So that's a useful point.
So what we would be paying for then, if we're not moving forward immediately, and if we're just getting a plan, would be the part A on this, which is structural engineering, civil engineering, and geotechnical engineering for $17,300.
No, sir. You need to do the surveying and the permitting itself too for the dock.
But would you need to do the permitting if we weren't going to go through with the construction of the dock at this time?
I guess it all depends on your time frame.
Well, it's uncertain.
Yeah. I guess what it comes down to is if we want to get it, if we have a design that we want to shop around for additional monies to the city, that's a wonderful thing. And that seems like a good idea, but I'm not sure I'm not ready to vote for anything that would be construction of a dock until I find out what kind of buy-in we can get from our partner, the city of Charleston. So that's why I'm wondering if we.
But I'm sorry. Well, Councilman Milliken, I believe that. So the surveying would have to do sort of where it goes, and the permitting would be getting permission from OCRM, someone like that.
Yeah, to
to
be
where it's
OCO.
going to be. This isn't like the building permit from we actually constructed. It would involve, basically we'd have, well, we have permission to put a dock here and this is what the dock would look like, but we don't have all the money we need to construct it. The $200,000 constructed, how much we put in. But I think the permitting would, permitting takes a long time. It may be well worth the investment to get permission to have a dock there. Rather than be in a situation where we go to the city and say, we would like a dock here. OCRM hasn't given us permission to put it here. We would have to ask, but.
Well, and I would also
Might go up.
just jump in to say that the permitting is not just the permission. And Chris can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not really sure as far as the dock's concerned, but in every other project we've done, the permitting is all of the back and forth and changes that might occur because of what we can't do. And then looking at, tweaking the design to see what can be done. So there is that give and take throughout the permitting process that would play into the design, I believe. Chris, is that accurate?
Correct. Yeah. And with this dock, it's a lot. It's going to be the coordination with OCRM and DHEC are going to be the primary players with the dock structure, with it coming into the waterway.
Well, any other questions or comments?
This is Bowles. I did just look up the memo of understanding that gave rise to the purchase of the park, and paragraph 5 says that the town is responsible for all improvements and maintenance. So I would not anticipate the city kicking in anything ever for this. Thanks.
I would not necessarily agree with you, Councilman Bowles. I would say if we were to ever demand that the city kick in something, like they owe us, then there's no chance. And the city has many competing, it would just come down to if the city councilwoman or councilman for this area wants to have this done and wants to make contributions, can get the support to get it done, then it could happen. But we have no claim to say that they must, share in all costs that we undertake.
That's right. And also in the memo of understanding, it points out that the city of Charleston is 100% owner of Brantley Park, and that despite that we paid more for it than they did, we have no ownership interest of this, yet we're responsible to do things like build docks over there. And so I just remind everybody that that's what we're dealing with right now.
The MOU allows us to manage the park for the most part as we see fit. It is a joint park. It is true we pay for it. We also have the bulk of the authority of how it's run.
I guess I would say we have bulk of the responsibility, or you could call it the bulk of the authority. We pay the tab for everything that will happen over there.
Exactly.
And I would remind everybody that whatever we do, it's under the memo of understanding, the town is responsible for 100% of the improvements to that area.
Exactly. And
Mayor, this is Bo Wilson. If I could interject, I believe you have 5 years to complete construction once your permit has been granted, if that's relevant to council.
All right. Is there any further discussion or any further questions?
Councilman Bowles, I just encourage everybody to vote no towards this. I don't think that putting any money into this park right now is a wise use of money. It might be later when Folly Road gets the facelift that is being discussed a lot these days. Maybe later when Roofing Folly Road is further along, it might be a really good idea then, but I would encourage everyone to not support this at this time. Thanks.
All right. Any further discussion?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Mignano. I most heartily suggest that we keep this a a passive green park area until we develop Folly Road, just as Councilman Bowles suggested, because I just don't think it makes sense for us to invest even money for like permitting of a dock or the cost to build a dock until we have adequate access to that area.
All right, any other discussion?
Yes, I also have a comment. I think it would be in everybody's best interest to do something about the present dock if it's structurally unsound. I don't know whether we need to take it out, but we need to do something to prevent people from getting injured on it. And I would like to see us do something about that and maybe find out about it. I also think that given what we found out about our HVAC system and future expenses, that we may need to allocate funds towards that and then perhaps delay this till later. That's all.
All right, any further discussion?
I concur with Councilman Milliken further, totally on that, especially in lieu of what we just heard about the unexpected charge that we could have, or sizable charge at the cultural center. I thoroughly agree with what he just said. This is Councilman Mullinax.
All right, so any further discussion? All right, hearing none, would the town clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
No.
Councilwoman Mignano,
No.
Councilman Milliken,
No.
Councilman Mullinax,
No.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. All right, so that fails. So now the next item is on the modified agenda that the town administrator asked that we add to the agenda a repair care roof replacement cost share. And under our rules, I need to ask for a vote to add this to the agenda. So I move that we add this to the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, would the town clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. Ashley, could you briefly speak to this?
Yes, this is a veteran resident in our community that needs a new roof. Given the cost, about $10,000, I went back to Habitat and asked them if they'd be willing to split this cost with us from their pot of money. And they agreed they would split it in half with us in order to be able to get it done.
Is there a motion in favor?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, so that would be Councilman Mignano was the second on that one. Any further questions or discussion?
Yes, is there a formal process for applying to repair care?
There is. We do have an application.
So could we send out announcements about it on occasion just to let people know that it's available?
We can, and we don't have, I would say word of mouth has really moved this. I mean, we have a waiting list, so there's definitely not a shortage of applications, but,
good.
But absolutely, we can advertise this periodically.
So in the past, I believe we had flyer information. We've distributed it at community meetings. I believe at the one of the outreach meetings at First Baptist, and we've made various efforts to promote it. But I agree that we need to make sure that it's that people know that they can apply. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, would the town clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. All right, so now we move to committee reports. The first committee is the Land Use Committee, Councilman Mignano.
Yes, I do have a report. Give me just a second. So last week, Councilman Mullinax and Mark Johnson and I met together to talk about stormwater drainage and the way that we're handling flooding and ditch issues, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very excited about that. Mark and I talked about a class that we wanted to co-host, teaching residents about rain barrel and rain gardens and things such as that. So I'm very excited about that. We look forward to putting that together as soon as possible. COVID-19 has definitely put a dent in what Mark had already started doing himself. So we hope to get this going as soon as possible. The other thing that I've been speaking to James Allen Charter High School regarding a repair care slash training program so that high school students could learn viable trades and help their community with smaller repairs than Habitat usually does for them. So I'm still in the works with that, and I look forward to moving that forward as fast as I can. Thank you.
Any questions for Councilwoman Mignano? Right, hearing none, thank you. Environmental and Beautification Committee, Councilman Milliken.
Yes, the Environment and Beautification Committee did not meet, but do have a report from James Island Pride, which is our Citizens Committee. James Island Pride hosted a litter pickup on Saturday, September 12th, and we managed to pick up litter along Harborview Road, Dills Bluff Road, Camp Road, and Fort Johnson Road. We had 9 citizen volunteers, and we were able to remove 24 bags of litter, which is pretty good for 9 folks. Our next litter pickup is an Adopt a Highway event that will happen October 24th from 9 to 11. As usual on this date, you could stop by Town Hall and pick up supplies for the pickup. It'll be social distancing, so therefore we won't be serving lunch. I'll remind everybody of that again at our October meeting, but October 24th, 9 to 11. And that's all I have right now.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilman Milliken? All right. I have no report from Children's Committee. Public Safety Committee, Councilman Mullinax.
We hope to have a meeting next Thursday at 7 o'clock, the 24th. That's still tentative, but when I get with Vinnie Quinn, our chairman of the Neighborhood Council, I'll make this official, but I'm pretty sure that we will be having this meeting. And I've spoken with Mark, and this is for Councilwoman Mignano to know, we may be talking about those issues that we're referencing at the meeting. You know, that so that's something that Mark and I had talked about. So that is a possibility that will be on the, you know, that will be our talk. So anyway, so that is all what I have to say now on that. But of course, when I find out something for sure, I'm almost definite we're going to have this meeting. But I've been told that we can, you know, we can have a hybrid meeting, won't be any problem. But we're just ironing out some details. But it will be posted on the website, and this is for definite. And that's all I have to say at this time.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions for Councilman Mullinax? All right, hearing none. The History Committee met and discussed a Civil War event for the spring, as well as a Revolutionary War event in the fall, and some discussion of activities for Black History Month. The History Committee assigned member of the History Council, Inez Brown Crouch, to form a committee to look at history displays in the Arts and Cultural Center. Any questions? Okay. The next is Rethink Folly Road. I have no report. Next, we have the Drainage Committee. Councilman Mullinex, you have a report?
Just kind of going over what Councilman Magnato said earlier. You know, we're at a meeting with Mark. Mark gave us some very interesting information on, you know, on how, in one part, and I would like this repeated at our neighborhood council meeting, is basically what some citizens can do on their own to prevent flooding in their yards on their property. You know, in addition to the assistance that we and other government entities can do. But the meeting was incredibly productive and very informative. And I want to thank Mark for affording us that opportunity. But we're going to have another meeting of the Drainage Committee sometime in the fall. I just don't know a date on that yet. But I'll let you know when I know that. And that's all I have to report tonight.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Councilman Mullinex about Drainage Committee business? Well, hearing none, let's go to the Business Development Committee. Councilman Bowles.
Mayor, we have continued to observe electronic meetings, mostly in the form of email threads. I have been forwarding to the members of the committee the ideas that Ashley has put forward, and Councilman Milliken sent some over as well. So on behalf of them, we appreciate everybody providing them a chance for input. And if anyone out there listening, I see we've dropped off in attendance from like 20 something to a dozen people now, but my email address to anyone in the town is dbowles, DBOLES, at jamesislandsc.us. If there's anything that you want to participate on or you want to share ideas with, I encourage you to reach out to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilman Bowles? All right, thank you very much. Tree Advisory Committee, Councilman Milliken.
Yes, the Tree Advisory Council met on September 8th. The Tree Council is working on information resources for planting trees with respect to appropriate sizes and species in right-of-ways. We hope to get these lists on a location on the town website to where we could better instruct people where to plant trees and the types of trees. The council also approved purchase of equipment for collecting data during our island-wide tree survey, wherein we hope to document all the locations and assess the health of island trees and island right-of-ways. Finally, the committee also decided to sign on a sign design for awards to citizens who have exemplary trees. This is going to be in a manner similar to like the Yard of the Month type of recognition, except it isn't going to be every month. It's going to be every now and again. But the idea is we identify great looking trees and make some sort of recognition of those trees. Maybe put that in the tree area on the town website. But that's all I have.
All right, any questions for Councilman Milliken about Tree Advisory Committee? All right, hearing none. The James Island Intergovernmental Council, I generally report on that, and there is a tentative meeting for the fall, but I don't have the date. Do you have the date? Does the town clerk? Francis, do you have the date?
It's around October 24th, but I'll need to verify that.
Okay. So, you know, our chairwoman, County Councilwoman Jenny Honeycutt, I saw an email where she mentioned it. So next we move to, that's all our reports. Next we move to proclamations and resolutions. We have Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. Is there a motion in favor?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
If there's no discussion, would the town
Yeah, I'd like to talk about it, if you don't mind, Mayor.
Sure.
This proclamation is to raise awareness of breast cancer and serves as a reminder for screening. The town of James Island will recognize the month of October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month and ask all residents to join in this worthwhile cause to celebrate successes and memorialize lost battles. There it is.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Would the town clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. And so next we go to resolution 2020-12 climate emergency mobilization. Is there a motion in favor?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second for consideration.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano.
I would like to say that I am in favor of protecting our environment and protecting our climate. However, after reading through this resolution, I have so many questions regarding the how we would do this. So before I could responsibly vote on this, I would need answers to how they want to implement this regarding regenerative agriculture system, ending greenhouse gases, phase out of fossil fuels. I need to know what exactly the plan is, and I think that perhaps this is overreaching. I think that we are addressing a lot of these things as a town with drainage and flooding and talking about how to plant indigenous plants on your property. And I just think that we need to have more information about this proclamation before we can actually vote on it. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I can address.
Councilman Milliken.
Thank you. I could address some of these issues. I think the resolution isn't designed to specifically address and come up with specific solutions to these issues. It's pointing out, first of all, that there is a problem. And recognizing a problem and that there is one is the first step towards finding solutions. So it's very important that we start with the recognition that we do have a climate issue. Now, is it one that the town alone can solve? No, it is not. Wildfires out west, hurricanes in the Gulf, mass flooding, passing resolutions at the town of James Island isn't going to solve those things. But guess what? If enough people start doing what we need to start doing to reverse this carbon emission issue, we will be able to reverse this. But it's going to take participation by all of our citizenry. It's going to take a massive mobilization effort on the part of all of our citizens to do the things that we need to do to change the way that the environment is being abused. So the fact is that what this resolution does is ask us to come up with the plan, ask us to come up with some ways of doing things. And it's not things that are wholesale. I'm not taking away, I'm not saying that we need to say that nobody's allowed to drive cars or that we're not allowed to have barbecue grills in the backyard or anything of that nature. But what I am talking about is starting to take the first steps. And the first step is to originate a plan. How can the town itself do better to lower its carbon footprint? And that's what our goal is. Our goal is to try to lower the amount of emissions going into the atmosphere. If other communities pass this, as many have, it would be a wonderful thing, because the more people that are on board with going through the practice of lowering their carbon footprint, the more likely it is that we could turn around this horrible trend towards global warming. And we have to do that, because if we don't, all the other species on the planet will die, as well as our own. This is where we're headed, folks. We're heading towards that. And you have to start somewhere. We have anywhere from 70 to 100 years of oil left in our planet. The internal combustion engine will not be available to our great-grandchildren. We have to come up with some innovative ways of doing things. And the only way to do that is to start making plans. The one thing our species does have is an enormous brain that allows it to plan ahead. And if we start planning ahead now and doing the things that we need to do, and all we're asking in this resolution is to come up with a plan and to start the process. We're not talking about raising anybody's taxes. We're not talking about having to hire somebody that hasn't been budgeted in our budget. That could be a volunteer. Who's going to educate the people of the town in our community? We have volunteers at the College of Charleston in the environmental studies program that would jump at the chance. So my point is, don't wring your hands and worry about things that are out of our control, because we can control the kind of things that will go into the plan. That's all I have to say.
All right, any further discussion?
This is Councilman Bowles. I wanted to touch on some of the things that people have said tonight. And I know that climate change can be a very polarizing topic, and there are a lot of people that do not subscribe to it or believe in it, that it's real. When I hear residents talk about this being something similar to the new Green Deal that failed before, I think that this is pretty far from the new Green Deal. The two of them do address climate change, but in really different ways. When I read this resolution, I see it's a call to gather information and nothing more. And there are, you know, the preambles are longer than the calls to action, and I can see where if you were reading the preamble as a call to action or something that the town has to do, it would sound that way. But all of the whereas clauses are just statements of intent or you know, the underlying reasons for bringing the resolution. So I'll point that out to the folks who read it. You know, I'm a big proponent of small government touching the lives of residents more than big government. I'm not a fan of the federal government, of asking the federal government to step in and do anything. And one of the speakers earlier said that we should leave this to state and federal government. And I'm a proponent of small government. This is what small government does. You know, we make proclamations that we think that climate change is a danger. And then we come up with ideas for ways that we as a town can address it. I heard some statements about eliminating gas burning cars and things, and I didn't see that anywhere in this resolution, and I don't think this resolution asks for that. I think, again, that with climate change being as polarizing as it is, a lot of folks might have just kind of seen the beginnings and then read into this resolution things that they've heard in other places that they didn't like. And so I would encourage everybody to go back and look at it, because it's not asking to add any tax burden. It's not projecting to add any cost to anybody. So go back and check that out. Ms. Shields I have some notes. Ms. Shields had mentioned that this will raise taxes. There's nothing in it that I've seen that would cause a raise in taxes or even result in that later. That this is a power grab. I don't think any one of us on this council is seeking to enlarge the duties or responsibilities of anybody on the council. Again, I encourage you to go back and read that this is an information gathering. It's a resolution. It's not an ordinance. An ordinance or something that people have to act on or that limits people is an ordinance, which is similar to a rule or regulation or a law. This is a resolution, which is just a statement from the town. It is based on boilerplate as far as I can tell, and I would let everyone know that if you research most things of this nature, legislation or resolutions, proclamations, what have you, most people don't draft these from the ground up. You go somewhere else and find something that is suitable and then you build on it. And so if you're out there listening and you feel like because it's from a template that makes it wrong, I would just urge you to re-examine that position, because a lot of these things come from passed around boilerplates and templates that you can customize for your own needs. And there was also a comment about this being advancing the personal agenda of council. And again, I hope, I'm sorry that it's come across that way to anybody out there, that this sounds like it's a personal agenda. I read it as something that's trying to help the town and the island and the area at large. So I would encourage everyone to vote in favor of it. And I'll stop talking now about it, but after everybody's said their piece, I do have a point of order on an amendment to make to it, and I don't know how to share. I have something I want to share or put up with everybody, but I don't really know how to do that. So I'll step down for a minute while I try to figure that out.
Okay. So one point of clarification. So Councilman Milliken sent to members of council a substitute version of the resolution. Is that, should I understand that as what you moved and Councilman Bowles seconded, or was it the original document in the packet that the public has seen? So what the public has seen is different than what you shared with council, right?
Yes, it's the amended amendment, or the amended version, the amended resolution that I thought we were considering at this point.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I should have made that immediately clear at the very beginning rather than pointed this out. It's just, that's what I assumed was going on. And so the members of the public saw the document that said that there would be no fossil fuels in 10 years. And if there are no fossil fuels in 10 years on James Island, that means there's no backyard grills, no gasoline cars, no motorboats, and so on. Now that Councilman Milliken has modified it, so there's no 10-year date. It's just that eventually we'll have no fossil fuels. And as he said, one day, in theory, one day fossil fuels would run out if we continued to use them at the same rate, though that is not necessarily the case that would happen. In any case, that was removed, and I think that greatly improved the resolution. Councilman Bowles says this is nothing like the Green New Deal. Well, when I read it, I saw in the original version a 10-year phase out of all fossil fuels and zero net greenhouse gases, a key element of the Green New Deal, a call for a national emergency. I'm very concerned about calling for climate emergencies or declarations of emergencies. When we declare an emergency as a government, and this calls for the town of James Island this is the town of James Island declaring an emergency. It's calling for the state to declare emergency. It's calling for the federal government to declare emergency. When emergencies are declared, then checks and balances are swept away, and individual rights are also swept away, as we see frequently. In the case of checks and balances, President Trump declared that there was an emergency at the southern border. Congress would not approve building a border wall. He's building it. Anyway, contrary to what Congress said, because of the COVID-19 crisis, we in the town have declared, I declared an emergency. And in various states, governors have declared emergencies. And in some cases, some governors had lockdowns where everyone had to stay in their houses and shelter in place for months on end. So when we declare an emergency, this generally means checks and balances go away, and also that individual rights can be ignored. And so I'm very concerned about that. And while this town cannot declare an emergency by resolution, so we are not really declaring emergency at the town, this resolution says that we council all think that the United States government should declare an emergency. And the president, whoever is our president in January, it will be reported to him that there's a national groundswell that he should declare a national emergency, which would allow him, if that happened, a climate emergency, to ignore checks and balances and to violate individual rights. A second concern is when I see climate mobilization. I remember that from the Green New Deal. Congresswoman Cortez explained it multiple times about how it would be like World War II, and that we would have a complete mobilization of the economy, and that the government would completely revolutionize the economy and, phase out into all fossil fuels and greenhouse gases in the next 10 years. And then when I found that boilerplate, where it came from, emergency climate mobilization.org, and found the template for this emergency, I also found what a climate mobilization means. An emergency reconstruction of an emergency reconstructing of a modern industrial economy accomplished at rapid speed, involving the vast majority of citizens, the utilization of a high proportion of available resources, and impacts all areas of society, nothing less than a government-coordinated social and industrial revolution. So we are taking part in a general movement calling for this revolutionary change in our economy. And it calls for this proposal that we are part of, that you're asking this council to make us part of, is calling for a 10-year revolution in the economy. And this, in my view, is not only unfeasible, a serious attempt at this would result in massive devastation to the American people. Now, we had a member of the public comment on this, an advocate of this proposal, tell us that it's only concerned about the profits of the businesses. No, we're talking about the well-being of the people. And that seems pretty extreme. Now, I also believe there has been some improvements also by removing the very difficult process we have of redoing our comprehensive plan and requiring that it all be coordinated with an effort to phase out all fossil fuels over the next 10 years. That seemed like a whole lot of work for our
it's not in there.
Planning Commission, and it was removed. And I appreciate that that is not included, that you remove that part of the resolution. And so, some of the members of the public who were concerned about that, well, thank you. That's an improvement. And so I agree that there have been some improvements, but I still remain very concerned that you're really asking us to sign on to this movement. It is not a unique document just for our town gathering information. This is a call for us being part of a movement to demand a rapid change in our economy. And it is exactly what the Green New Deal was. And so I think we just need to more carefully look at this. And really, I would suggest, rather than modifying that boilerplate that came from that group, we should start from the beginning and come up with something that we can all agree on, that shares our concerns with the environment, that shares our concern with greenhouse gas, that talks about what we on James Island can do to respond to sea level rise, things that will happen pretty much regardless of what we do on James Island regarding the use of fossil fuels here. So in my view, we have a lot of work to do, and I would just ask that we defer consideration of this resolution until December, that we get much more public input, that instead of just a small number of people who are already supported being gathered together to contact us, that all the people of James Island understand what to do. So I call to defer to December. Is there a second?
I second.
So now we are discussing deferring the
Excuse me, point of order.
Yes.
There's already a motion on the floor.
A motion to defer is always in order. You're overruled. So we are now discussing a motion to defer until a date certain, the December meeting, December 17th.
This is Bowles. What's the purpose of the December date?
To review the language, to come up with language that we can all agree on, to inform our publics, the people of James Island, so more of them will have an understanding of what these issues are before us and what we're considering, instead of something that was sprung on town staff a week ago, shared with town council on Friday, and only in a few days has the public general been able to know. So we would have more time. And right now we are facing a crisis of COVID-19. Maybe we should hope that by December, the worst of that will pass and we can deal with this issue.
Couple of points of order on
Yes.
that, Mayor. If I'm hearing the basis for your deferral correctly, the basis for your deferral is so that we can go gather information and come back and talk about climate change. Is that accurate?
It's to come up with discussing language for what kind of resolution the town would support. Yes.
Okay, so it's similar to this resolution, maybe with different underpinnings is what I'm hearing. And then also, I think that this was put forward in a prior council, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and was voted down 4-1, and has not come back since this resolution has been put forward. So when
That's
we
not,
talk about it
yeah,
being,
not anything, not that I recollect, but regardless, I don't know how that's relevant.
well, it just goes to the element of surprise that was being discussed and how this is something that's new and no one's talked about. But I am encouraged to hear you say that you want to go gather information and come back and talk about how the town can address climate change together.
This is Councilwoman Mignano. I think that the part of like getting more information would be to address the necessary measures to restore a safe climate include a managed phase out of fossil fuels, ending greenhouse gas emissions, reduce carbon from the atmosphere, and a regenerative agriculture system. I think that for the public of James Island, it would be really helpful to hear some concrete solutions, no pun intended, on what proposals would be to address these things so that they could make their best choice.
Can I speak?
Yes, of course. So we're speaking, yes, you can speak.
Yeah. First of all, I don't see really why we need to defer right now. Again, this is not onerous. This is putting a plan in place, a process in place that could also include the citizens in the planning process. There's nothing that excludes them from that. We had a number of citizens weigh in on this resolution. I want to thank them. By my count, let's see, we had 91 citizens who shared their opinions with us. 74 were in favor, 17 were opposed. All that's great. So we had a number of people share their input in this process. I feel like this is a very important thing, a very important resolution to move forward at this point in time, because the longer we wait, the worse it is. Mayor, this is an emergency. It's an emergency. Is California on fire? How about Oregon and Washington? Again, this happened last year too. Hurricanes. What happened in Houston was an amazing thing with the amount of rain. Nobody ever saw that much rain. It was amazing. Rain bombs in the Midwest. This is not normal behavior. This is emergency type of climate situation that needs addressed. And it's getting more expensive every time. If you want to undermine the economic infrastructure of this country, just sit back and watch it happen. Or we could just start doing some things. A mobilization is not the same thing as a mobilization in World War II. It's not the Green New Deal. What this is a mobilization for is for people to learn about how to change their behavior so that we can survive. It's an important thing to do. And it starts now. You have to do it. Rain barrels aren't going to solve our problem, but many other things will. So if we combine a whole lot of different approaches and help people do the right thing, then I think that we stand a chance. But it's not going to be James Island alone. And somebody's got to start the process. Somebody has to start it. James Island, Folly Beach, just like the gentleman said about the offshore drilling referendum. It started locally. And if we start locally, pretty soon more people will adopt it and we'll be able to get a critical mass to reverse this trend. If we do nothing, things are going to get worse. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you. So I would like to respond to that, so if the town of James Island does not pass this resolution this month, but passes a different resolution in 2 months, it will have absolutely no effect on whether there is fires in the West or hurricanes or sea level. And so it is not an emergency that we have to pass this resolution right away. That instead we can have broad public input. Now, again, we have the situation where we get 100 emails, which we know is less than 1% of the voters of James Island. And I asked the people who emailed us, do you live in the town or not? And there were people from West Ashley, from downtown, and there were people that don't live in the town. And that's who we represent. And so we need the people of our town to become aware of these issues. And if they look at the national mobilization for the national emergency, and they look at the information they put out about what mobilization means, and they see that information and they don't agree with me that it sounds to me like calls for rationing, mandatory vegetarianism, that's not really there, that it's instead just educating people about what they need to do. It's all just, this mobilization is just an educational thing, fine. But I think people need to know. And so I just think we need some more time and not run into this without further information. And so anyway, so is there any further discussion of the motion to defer?
Just point of order, I also have a motion to amend.
That's not in order. So we have to deal with the motion to defer. It's not amendable. You could amend it to defer to a different time. So you could, say, well, no, we should defer to January.
I thought the statement earlier from Councilman Milliken was that there was an amendment pending and that we had to vote on that first. And then the response from the mayor was you can make motions to amend or motions at any point. Maybe I'm remembering that incorrectly.
Well, so if you have a motion to defer, then we need to vote on the motion to defer. We can amend a motion to defer, but it has to be referenced to when do we defer to. It can't be amending the main motion.
Right. So earlier when I was speaking, I had mentioned I have a motion to amend and then I need to be able to share my amended draft, and that was prior to the motion to defer. I just don't know how to share my draft.
So if you had made that motion and it had been seconded, then we would be dealing with that.
Right. So
in any case, Councilman Bowles, if you are going to propose a fundamental change in the document that this last minute that you have not shared with us, and in fact, I have it on, I got the email, so I see it. I saw it at the meeting. And even more so, if we are going to be making changes on the fly right now, surely we need to defer consideration of this, receive your information, have time to digest it, to share it with the public. And then consider this when we have enough time to make a wise decision for the people of James Island and for the climate.
We just voted on whether or not to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at this meeting on things that people were learning about on the fly. And what we're talking about right now does not require any money to be spent. It simply requires the town to adopt a position that we believe in climate change is a problem, and that we want to do something to address it. And what I hear from a lot of the opposition is that there's just there are folks, perhaps even on this council, who don't believe that climate change is a real thing, that it's something that is just some sort of hype in the media, or that it's some sort of partisan issue, and it's not. And again, I don't want to leave this up to the federal government. I don't think that that's the way it starts. I think it starts in our own backyard, and we have a moment right now to start it in our own backyard. And I'm glad that you've been able to review the amended version that I circulated to everybody. And I keep asking, I'm trying to share it now so that the public can see it, and I haven't been able to do that. So if anybody wants to tell me how to do that, I'll be happy to do it.
So we're
We'll go through it
continuing
and
to discuss
whether,
whether we defer or
you know,
not.
vote on deferral. I think you're out of order in that because I brought it up earlier, but you know,
So
I agree, and I would have given Councilman Bowles a second on his if I knew that he needed it. I thought that out of courtesy, you as mayor leading the meeting would have given him the opportunity to make his motion.
I think we should vote on deferral. That is the proper approach. And I also think, in my opinion, amending the document here at this very meeting is not out of order. It's out of order from, you know, we're supposed to vote on the deferral, but it's not you can amend it. But I also think that even if that amendment were made, we still should defer consideration of an amended version, including this amendment. So I don't think that's terribly important.
For everybody out there, that I told you that I had an amendment that I was going to move to do so, and I was going to let everybody speak before doing that. You made a motion to defer, it was seconded, knowing full well that the motion was out there, actually having even read the amended document, as you said, on your computer. I just don't think that's in order. But again, I'm not the mayor, so all I can do is vote right now. Thanks.
This is Councilwoman Mignano. I just had some discussion to talk about with this. Is that acceptable at this time?
Yes.
Okay, so I have read this resolution. I understand that many people are concerned with climate change. I am not saying that climate change is a hoax or a fallacy or anything like that. I would like to ask Councilman Milliken if he could please show us or research and give us some concrete solutions to some of these climate change issues that he's talking about. I think that would address a lot of the people's concerns for this. I just really don't feel comfortable voting for this resolution at this particular time because the solutions to the issues that are at the bottom of the first page of this resolution have not been addressed. So what are those solutions? That's what we need to know so that we can move forward. And I think that would make a lot of people feel more comfortable on James Island as well.
What
Okay,
solutions?
thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I want to address Councilwoman Mignano's questions. Solutions to which issues I guess I would need to know, and what questions you have. We have had plenty of time to answer questions, and I would have been happy to do that. So I'm perplexed as to which questions you would have.
And I appreciate that. And I know that you've answered me on several things. I think the A through D, like how are we recommending, if we adopt this resolution, how are we recommending the managed phase out of fossil fuels? What does that look like for James Island? What are we recommending for state, federal government? What are we looking at? What does that mean? Ending greenhouse gas emissions? Hold on, I'm not done yet. Hold on. Like A through D, like answer all of those, like what concrete things are we going to do to address those? I think that the people need more information about that because a lot of people are very concerned that it would be a hardship on them.
May I speak?
Yes.
All right. So a managed phase out of fossil fuels. Well, a good way to do that is to increase our public transportation possibilities on the island. If less people are taking their cars to work, there's going to be less emissions. It's pretty straightforward. Public transportation is a wonderful thing if we invest in it. It's a great thing. We're also doing some wonderful things about sidewalks and bike lanes on the island. Our town can continue to do some of those things. That's a wonderful thing. Ending greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible to establish a zero emission economy. That's a wonderful thing too. And by doing number one, you're also accomplishing B. So that's a pretty good way of doing that. A widespread effort to safely reduce excess carbon from the atmosphere. We have a tree council, plant more trees, grow more vegetables in your yard, because that gets you to a full transition to a regenerative agriculture system. If everybody has a victory garden, then everybody can perhaps do some things to minimize their trips to the grocery store. Grocery stores may not have to stock as many things because people are growing them. There's a lot of ways to have a regenerative agriculture system. Aquaculture is underutilized here on James Island, and it's something that can be a tremendous resource for us. Clam farms, all kinds of possibilities can be utilized that are very regenerative. Vertical agriculture is a thing of the future. I'm just saying that there are solutions, and you don't have to dig very far to find good examples of these things. These are ideas that can be incorporated into our plan. And again, we're not saying to do it now, but we're saying we can decide how we want to go about doing these things. And that's what this is about. This resolution is about making a plan. If the mayor's not happy with the word emergency, we could call it a resolution endorsing the declaration of a climate mobilization effort to restore a safe climate. All right, there's ways to go about this now and not in December, when we have very few people, I might add, that have any interest in anything going on at the town. I just want to thank some of my collaborators on this, the Charleston Climate Coalition, for their help in authoring this. Yes, it is a boilerplate general type of format, but we did do some modifications to tailor it to more James Island usefulness. So there you have it. I hope that addresses your concerns, Dr. Mignano.
Yes, thank you very much, Garrett, or Councilman Milliken.
So, we can vote on this deferral issue and then can move forward.
I'd like to get Bo's reading on this, on whether or not it's really a good thing to do, mainly with respect to the chairman ignoring Dan's request to have
the proper approach is to challenge the ruling of the chair.
Well, there it is then.
So you're challenging the ruling of the chair.
Right.
So the vote is to uphold the ruling of the chair. Please call the roll. And so a favorable vote means that we will continue to discuss a vote to defer. A no vote means that we will consider Councilman Bowles' motion instead. So please call the roll. This is to uphold the ruling of the chair.
Okay, Councilman Bowles. Councilwoman Mignano.
Yes.
Councilman Milliken.
No.
Councilman Molinax.
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. And so now we consider to continue to consider. I think we should just bring it to a vote on the defer. We can continue to talk around this, but I think we need to go ahead and vote on that. And if we vote to defer, then we will revisit this in December, and we will have time to share this information more broadly with our public and think about language. I am not happy with mobilization because of this use throughout the community, particularly as part of the Green New Deal. But in any case, rather than continue to discuss, let's go ahead and bring it to vote so we can afford it. If you have some more discussion, yes,
Councilman. One more point of order to the council. Just bear in mind that what just happened to me will probably happen to each of you if you ever have a point to bring up in the future. And so if you want to let the mayor stifle one of us and then put off the vote for 3 months, 2 months, 3 months, what we're voting on right now speaks more than just to the resolution that Councilman Milliken put out there. It's how we want to govern ourselves and run this council. So keep that in mind when you're voting. And I encourage for you not to vote in favor of the deferral. Thanks.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
No, ma'am.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
No.
Councilman Molinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. So the motion to defer is passed. This matter will be brought back up at our December meeting. So our next item on the agenda is Resolution 2013, resolution for former PC and BZA members. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
So, I would like to just briefly say that the our former Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeal members did a wonderful job working for us, and we really hope that at a later meeting, when we're all back meeting together in public, that we will have a token of recognition for them and bring them forward and do this again. But I do think it's appropriate that we recognize them at this time. Any further discussion? So this is for David Bevon and Lindy Palmer from the Planning Commission and Jason Gregory from the BZA, who are now, have moved on. All right, so would you please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Mignano.
You trying to leave me out, Francis?
Sorry.
My vote is yes.
I'm getting tired.
Me too.
Councilman Molinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. Okay, next we are going to Resolution 2014 regarding drainage conditions in Belterre. Is there a motion in favor?
I
make
move.
that motion.
Well, I'll take that as, let's let Councilman Molinax make the motion, and we'll count you as a second, okay? Please, Councilman Mignano, Councilwoman Mignano. Would you like to speak to it? Would anyone like to, any discussion?
I have some discussion. I am very thrilled to see that we are moving forward with this, because I have heard from so many residents regarding the drainage with Belterre and surrounding neighborhoods. So I really look forward to this moving forward and addressing a lot of the people's concern.
Any other discussion?
This is
Councilman Molinax?
Molinax. Yeah, I had been working on this for quite some time. It's been a little frustrating because the city of Charleston, this problem on Schooner involves a backup of a body of water because of 2 trees has fallen, and it's flooded one yard, and it only promises to get worse. And the city told me just probably about a month or so ago that now they don't have the easement to it. It's the HOA, Belterre. And from what I understand, Councilwoman Jackson and Mayor Tecklenburg have actually made an appeal to Belterre's HOA, requesting they do something about this. And I decided to, and I had some help from Ashley and some others on this, to try to draft something that could, get them to work together to try to help us get these constituents some relief from this flooding that's threatening not only their yards and their utility sheds, but eventually their homes. So I just hope that this will put some motivation in our HOA and the city of Charleston, to work together on this. And I do applaud Mayor Tecklenburg and Councilwoman Jackson of going to the BZA for this. I'm sorry, to the HOA of Belterra for this. And I hope this will just move along the process a little quicker.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah, I've got a comment.
Let's Councilman Milliken first.
I've got a comment on this. I'm a little perplexed why we can't go ahead and just sue Belterra for causing flooding on our residents. This is something that they should take care of. And Mayor, you could write a letter to their HOA. You could write a letter to the city complaining to get the city to compel them to do this. I don't understand why we have to pass resolutions to get the city or to get an HOA to do what they should be doing anyway. This doesn't make sense to me.
I totally agree with
any further discussion?
I kind of agree with what Councilman Milliken's saying. I'm just hoping if there's no action on this in 30 days, then I would kind of entertain that motion. I'm just hoping that this will, get the process moving. And if it doesn't, then we may have to resort to that. And I have already thought about that. That's kind of my nuclear option, in my opinion. But I do agree with your reasoning on this. I just would like to give the HOA at least 30 days on this. And if they don't act, as unfortunately on one other issue regarding gates, it's kind of disappointing. But if they don't act on this, then I would, be willing to entertain that motion. Certainly at our next meeting.
Thank you. Councilman Bowles, did you have a comment?
Comment or a question rather than a comment. This sounds to me like a resolution where the town government is going to direct another government to step in and do something. Am I reading that correctly? And then my follow-up question is, do the residents of Schooner Road feel like, and Lighthouse Point generally feel like, this is an emergency situation with the flooding that's happening back there?
Well, so there's been flooding in the past. Right now, there's not. Well, maybe today there's flood water, but so it's a problem from the past, and there is a little bit of a drainage ditch that runs between the Belterra, let's see, open area, green space, and the properties in the back of Lighthouse Point along Schooner Drive, and so extending that ditch, further up into what's Belterra's property, it would be nice if the city of Charleston would do that, and that would help relieve possible flooding in this area.
But if I'm reading this correctly, it's another resolution, which is not a requirement or anything. It's simply a statement to the city.
Yes, it's a request to the city and to the homeowners as well, to the HOA, that they cooperate with this.
I don't guess anybody else sees the irony in what we're voting on right now versus the climate change statement earlier, but that'll be the end of my comments.
Right. All right. Any other discussion? All right.
Yes.
Yes, Councilman McNaught.
I'm so sorry. I'll be brief because it's late. I would just like to say that I am very heartened by this proposal because to be good neighbors and help the people around them to decrease.
I don't know if you can hear me, Councilwoman McNaught, but we're not hearing you. I think we lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can.
Okay, so James Island citizens regarding flooding issues and some of the
I'm sorry, we've lost you again. You're breaking up. We're not hearing you. I'm sorry. Can you hear us? Can you hear me? Well, let's you go ahead and let's hope she's hearing us. And if there's any further discussion, does anyone else have any more comments or discussion? And we'll let her if she comes back in, and let her discuss. Hearing none. Councilwoman Mignano. Well, I think we need to go forward. And yes. I'm sorry, we need to go forward. And so let's bring this to a vote with the town clerk call the roll.
Okay. Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yeah.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. Okay, the next item on the agenda is an item that was added by the town administrator. Earlier this week, it did was shared and meet FOIA requirements, but our rules will require that council add it to the agenda. Is there a motion to add this item, resolution for? Is there a second? Yes, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
So if there's no discussion, let's go ahead and vote to add it to the agenda. There's no discussion. With the town clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. So now, Ashley, if you're still here, would you please briefly explain what you're asking for this?
Oh, well, thanks for adding it to the agenda. It just snuck up on me, a grant that's due in the next week. I need a resolution and support from council to match this grant 15%. It's a $25,000 request, and we'd be requesting economic development funds to help with the cost of the Arts and Cultural Center.
And so our contribution would be how much?
Oh, $37.50, but we'll be spending way more than that.
$3,750.
Yes.
All right. Is there a motion in favor?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Any questions? All right. Would you please call the roll? Town clerk.
Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano, Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. So now we have item 7, which is emergency ordinances. This emergency ordinance for electronic meetings will expire, but in many, it's been superseded by a regular ordinance that we passed at, I believe, the last meeting. Is there any action or proposed action on this?
Just to clarify, Mayor, so we will still have our emergency ordinance pertaining to electronic meetings that will be extended?
Yeah, it still applies, yes.
And that, when is that slated? Is that October that's supposed to expire?
No, well, when the COVID-19 emergency expires, and I suppose that would be under my authority, but I anticipate doing that in conjunction with Charleston County and the state.
Okay,
And
so it's still going to be in effect?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
For our October meeting.
Good.
It would still be authorized to have electronic meetings through the town through October.
All right.
So we have no ordinance for second or final reading. I mean, if there's no action on this, we'll go forward, and we have no ordinance for first reading. But And now we go to new business hazard mitigation plan, council notification. Ashley, would you explain that?
There's no discussion really, just I just wanted to notify you all that the plan, this year's plan has been published, and we'll make it available on our website with a link to Charleston County's website.
All right. Next is executive session, and I will ask that town council approve going into executive session in order to get legal advice on our Dominion tree agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Would the town clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Bowles,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mignano,
Yes.
Councilman Milliken,
Yes.
Councilman Mullinax,
Yes.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes. So mechanically, I believe Ashley will be sending us another link that we need to open up for our executive session. And I suppose we need to all mute and
Mayor, you're still muted.
we will need to come back to this meeting after the executive session, but we will get a link, right? You're gonna email us with a new link, right, Ashley?
Yes, you should have it. I've already emailed it.
Mayor or Dan,
Yeah,
I can't get into the executive session. Have you tried?
yeah, it says it, the host is still in another meeting.
Yeah. I texted Ashley. I think she's going to need to close this meeting in order to open the other, because it won't let the town host two meetings at the same time, I assume.
I got that same message.
Okay.
We're having technical difficulties over at Town Hall. This looks like the original meeting we were just in, our town council meeting, right?
Yeah, that's the only one I could get in.
Okay.
Correct.
So the problem is that it's Ashley being the host of both meetings. It's very, it doesn't seem to be letting her host the other meeting. And anyway, she's working on it. So just wanted to let y'all know. I realize it's late.
Yes, it is.
All right, well, let's see, who would you please call the roll at the, not the executive session, but the current meeting, Francis? Let's see who's here. Garrett's here, I'm here. Is Dan still here?
Dan's here.
Councilman Yano is not. And I don't think Councilman Mullinax is on.
Well, they're probably waiting with their phones ringing or something. I don't know. In any case, we are unable to have the executive session, and so the executive session failed. No votes were taken. Nothing was done, and we're back in regular session. We are now at. I realize that it would be good if we could get Councilwoman Magnano and Mullinax back, but I'm not sure that we can. And it is time to have any announcements or statements.
Yeah, I've got one. I guess the climate emergency resolution will be back on our docket in December for our December meeting. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yes.
So what is the process that we're going to go through to collect public input?
Well, I will have to think about that.
So it sounds like we would need to make a plan for that.
I suppose.
Like something we could have done if we passed the resolution. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Do you have any remarks, closing remarks, Councilman Bowles?
Just encourage everybody to go read Robert's rules and to remember the oaths that we took when we were sworn into office.
Okay, thank you.
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
So I'm sorry, Cynthia, for Councilwoman Magnano, we had technical difficulties. Our ability to set up the executive session as a separate meeting failed. And so what we have gone through, what has happened is Councilman Milliken and Councilman Bowles have made some their comments, the closing comments. Do you have any closing comments which you would like to make?
No, I would like to hear their closing comments though.
I'd said that I reminded everybody to review Robert's rules regarding how meetings are run, and for everyone to also revisit the oaths that we took when we were sworn into office. And since you're on the line now, I'll also point out that if you're ever undermined or overridden the way I was this evening during our meeting, I will support you or any other council member to make sure that you are heard and that your vote that was put forward or that your amendment or your motion is put forward.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? All right. Hearing none, there's no further business before town council. The meeting's adjourned.